Good evening.
Zoom, right? Yes.
Welcome. I'm calling the meeting to order because we need to reorganize as the first activity tonight. But before we do that, we're going to just do a quick round of introductions because we have a new school committee member. So Carrie Patel, we want to welcome you from Carlisle. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And why don't we just zip around the table? Sharon, maybe you could go next.
The Carlisle Regional Student Member, and welcome, Carrie.
Joanna Court Booth, nice to see you. Good to see you.
Harry Rankin, nice to meet you.
Aisha Lawton, nice to meet you. Michael Rett.
Alexa Anderson, nice to meet you.
Tracy Morano. We've met before.
Bob Connery, I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. Nice to meet you, Carrie. Welcome.
Kristen Anderson, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. Welcome.
Cynthia Rainey, Concord.
Great. So Carrie, slow us down at any point, ask questions. It will seem new and we're ready to help you acclimate. So tonight, the first order of business is to seat the new Concord Carlisle School Committee to elect its officers and make other necessary appointments. I request that the chair of the Concord School Committee call for the seating of the Concord Carlisle School Committee and for the election of officers for the Concord Carlisle School Committee. Other appointments can be made at that time if the committees have worked out assignments. The appointments that require a vote in addition to the chair of the school committee are the appointment of the treasurer, treasurer. So you're calling. Did you catch that, Alexa?
Yes,
Yes.
I will call to order. Okay. So you've called to
Just
order.
called to order. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am going to make a motion to recognize Alexa Anderson, Court Booth, Tracy Morano, Cynthia Rainey, and Carrie Rankin as Concord members of the Concord Carlisle Joint School Committee, and Sharon Witt and Carrie Patel as Carlisle members of the Concord Carlisle School Committee.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay. How does everyone like that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So then I guess I'll continue on. And now I will accept nominations if there are any for chair of the Concord Carlisle School Committee. This was a tough one. We didn't get a lot of interest in this, so
I would nominate Tracy Morano.
great. Do I have a second for that nomination? Anyone?
Court.
Oh, Court, sorry. You know, I can't hear you, Court. All in favor of nominating Tracy Morano as chair of the Concord Carlisle School Committee? Aye. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Your meeting, Ms.
Thank you.
Morano.
So at this point, nominations will be accepted and voted for the vice chair of the Concord Carlisle School Committee.
So I would, based on my email submissions, like to nominate Ms. Sharon Witt to be the vice chair of the Concord Carlisle School Committee.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you guys so much, both, for volunteering. We appreciate it so much.
All right. And next up, we have the appointment of the school committee recording secretary. And this would be the lovely Erin who is behind the scenes. So would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to appoint Erin Higgins as the recording secretary.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. And then we also are going to appoint a treasurer to the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee.
I will make a motion to appoint Allison Blake as the treasurer of the Concord Carlisle Regional School District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and this is not on there, but we're trying to do things the right way, and we are going to also reseat Domingos DeRosa, who is not here, and Aisha Lawton to the Concord and Concord Carlisle school committees. So we don't have to vote on that, but I just want to acknowledge that. And you are in a 2-year term, and so is Domingos, and you can continue on as to be the Concord rep, even though, because I talked to Domingos and he was like, well, but Miles is going to high school. I said, it's totally fine. You can still be the Concord rep. So, so we're happy to have you with us again. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
It's been a good year.
Really good year.
All right, and at this point, we are going to adjourn into executive session. So if someone has a motion in front of them,
Move that the Concord School Committee and the Concord Carlisle School Committee will enter into executive session under purpose 3 of the open meeting law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the secretaries and maintenance unions and return to open session.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we will be back in about 15 minutes,
All right.
maybe more, maybe less. No promises, maybe more, maybe less.
Okay.
Carrie, Felicity.
Okay,
Somebody's.
we're back.
Hello. Give me 1 minute. I'll share my screen.
Oh, it might be that one.
Oh, I think can you hang on, Harry? Hang on 1 second.
Sorry.
We're having some technical difficulty in the room. Really echoing.
Who else is on Zoom?
Is anybody else on Zoom? There we go. I think that's good. All right. Welcome back, everyone. We have our CCHS students with us tonight. We have Harry, Felicity, and Zaria. And just so you guys know, we have a new member to the Regional School Committee, which is Carrie Patel, who's at the end. So just in case you're wondering why we have different people here, we just reseated the Concord Carlisle School Committee.
Recording in progress.
Now it's you. Okay, we're ready for the update.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So we can just jump right into it. Felicity, if you want to get started.
All right, awesome. So Student Senate recently had a number of Spring Spirit events. We had the color run, which you can see a photo on the right. I was there and it was a lot of fun, lots of colored powder, and the weather was great too. There was also the cornhole tournament and spirit assembly on Thursday. And on Saturday, which was the one day the weather wasn't good, we had the drop off swap off in preparation for the pop-up thrift store, which I think is sometime in the next week or next 2 weeks ish. So these are all just a bunch of really exciting events to help wrap up the year for students.
Yeah, definitely. And elections are underway for class government and student senate. So that's exciting and definitely kind of starting to show that we're getting down to the wire at the end of the year. And also it's the last week of classes for seniors. Obviously, their last regular day is going to be Thursday. So it's another thing that's kind of crazy. We're all kind of getting ready to move on up a little bit.
Course schedules for next year are out and students are meeting with their guidance counselors. I know I had to get a meeting with my guidance counselor and basically change my entire schedule, but I know everybody's pretty excited to get their schedules for next year. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely second that. Also for another performing arts update, Into the Woods was really great. Thanks to everyone who came. I don't know if any of you were at the Saturday matinee, but that was the time when we had possibly a squirrel and some electric issues and a power outage. But anyway, it was still a really great experience I think for everyone. And this week we have the Pops concerts. The chorus Pops concert is tomorrow night. Which is also our chorus director, Ms. Smith's last concert ever since she's retiring at the end of this year. So that's really special. And then the band and orchestra Pops concert is the day after on Thursday as well.
Last week we had our last math MCAS as sophomores, me and Felicity. And in 2 weeks we have our last science MCAS, which I know I'm very excited for. I want to be done with MCAS. I'm so glad to be done. And yeah.
Yeah. And then one last thing that I want to point out. So we had our final meeting for juniors and seniors who are currently advisory leaders. And one of the things that Ms. Stahl and Mr. Gio were able to talk about is kind of the program for next year. Obviously, with the new bell schedule, we are losing the traditional weekly advisory time. So they want to kind of tell everyone that there's still going to be a role for upperclassmen to play in helping to sort of lead and shape the ninth grade experience. And they're going to be keeping a lot of the people who were juniors participating this year, and they're going to be looking for some rising juniors as well. So I know that's exciting for a lot of people at the school who had been wondering about that program with the new bell schedule. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great. All right.
Felicity, my Instagram started suggesting a Felicity for Senate Instagram account. So I just started following you. It's
I
been fun.
saw. Thank you for following my Senate account. Actually,
It's really good.
Instagram disabled my campaign account for 3 days, and I got really scared because I was like, it's right before the election. I can't have this happening to me.
Well, I
And
think
you're
it's
like,
back.
oh, it's a
I think
mistake.
it's recommending that I follow you. So I did. And it's been fun to watch your campaign live. So
Thank you.
Yes, Carrie.
Felicity, I just wanted to say I took my daughter and one of her best friends to Into the Woods last week, and we on Friday night, and I was so impressed with the talent across the board, from the music in the pit to the lighting to the incredible singing. Like, it was just such a fun performance. And she and her friend, they're 7, they're little, so they were talking about doing like theater camp this summer or something, but it just got them really excited. So thanks for, I know you were really involved in that, and thanks to everybody who put that show on. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I'll definitely pass that on to everyone else in theater. I'm sure they'll really appreciate that. So thank you.
And I know you guys were all involved in the color run and the spirit assembly. Those were excellent additions to the high school. It definitely brings that school spirit aspect to the school, because you get it in the fall and it's great, but to have it in the spring, I think all the students really liked it. No, my kids loved it. It was just a great day. The weather was great. You had the perfect weather for it. And of course, they loved seeing Miss Stahl and Mr. Kameza get dunked. That was the highlight. I think it was Mr. Hoplitzall. Was he the other one? Or 3?
He was.
That's great. So I know it takes a ton of work from Senate. So you guys did a great job. Anyone else? No? Okay, we have 2 more meetings left this year. And then in terms of next year, I'm not sure how that works out with you guys, who's going to continue, or if we'll have other reps joining us. So we'll just wait and see what happens with that. That's how it usually works. We hear in the fall. So we'll see you next time, but feel free to stay if you like.
thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to public comment. Our public comment period is a period of 20 minutes. We will start with comments in the room and then go online. And just as a reminder, you will have 3 minutes. This is a meeting with the public, not with the public. So if you have a public comment, you can use the raise hand feature and you will be called on. I see no one in the room and no one online. So we will move on. On to our chairs, liaison.
My raised hand didn't work.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, Akia, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I was fumbling on my end. So hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Akia Obas. I am a Boston parent. I'm here today regarding Concord's public schools decision to involve the police in response of the incident that occurred on the school bus from Boston to Concord on May 4th. While students should certainly face appropriate discipline for any inappropriate behavior, CPS's overreaction was very traumatizing to all students on the bus, and needlessly so. This trauma was compounded by the fact that it was possible elementary school students could be on that bus. Elementary school students have the option of taking the middle school bus in the morning, so that could so they can participate in before school activities like chess is one of them. My daughter's in that. And so it's traumatizing that the middle school students, but it would even be more traumatizing to have younger elementary school students on that bus, like my daughter who's 6. We appreciate Dr. Hunter's email to the school community, which clarified that the adults made mistakes and that children did nothing wrong. I agree that her assessment was, it was implicit bias was involved and that much work remained to be done in this regard. While not excusing the student's behavior, I believe that there's a systematic issue underlining the incident. For a substantial part of the school year, there has been no consistent bus monitor on the middle school bus, even though CPS is supposed to have a bus monitor on that route, given that it's a longer duration. In light of the above, I'm requesting that 1, Dr. Hunter, the bus driver, and/or the bus dispatcher apologize to the students for the overreaction and the unnecessary escalation. 2, that parents are notified as soon as possible when a bus monitor is unavailable for any of the MECO bus routes. 3, an emergency bus monitor should be secured for the middle school bus as soon as possible, and plans put in place for next year so that there are no gaps in bus monitor coverage. If a bus monitor isn't available on a certain day, I hope that we can share the burden of staffing more widely as a Boston and Concord community, instead of relying solely on the MECO directors and staff. That's a small pool of people. 4, bus drivers and dispatchers should be required to participate in the annual DEI training unless this is already in place. 5, the school committee reevaluate CPS's bus policies and create one consistent and fair policy that applies to all routes. The policy should clarify when law enforcement is prohibited to be contacted. If any of these steps have been taken, thank you. I ask that it be communicated both to the Boston and Concord families. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. Thank you for allowing me here today. And I'm looking forward to a prompt follow-up and looking forward to partnering on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like Elizabeth Frank, you have your hand raised also.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Frank, 1283 Elm Street in Concord. And I just wanted to express my support for the comments Akia just shared on behalf of the Metco Family Collaborative. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we really appreciated Dr. Hunter's direct, clear communication about the bus incident. And I would appreciate if a further follow-up could be shared with the school community regarding further steps and actions the administration has been undertaking. And also that the school committee put it on the agenda to discuss and finalize a transportation policy that could apply to all routes before the next school year begins, to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. Thanks so much for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? I do not see any hands raised. All right, I've closed public comment. So moving on to a reading of the minutes, you should have the April 25th minutes from Erin. Does anyone have any changes, comments? I haven't heard from anybody. All right.
Second districts.
And the second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, correspondence. At the region, I believe we had 2 pieces of correspondence. One actually was meant for Concord Public. And the second piece was on embedded leveling for English at CCHS.
And in Concord, we had 6 emails. 3 were, I would sort of give an umbrella classification as DEIB related emails. One was a thank you for the work we did at town meeting. One, my favorite, was an 8th grade civics project email. And then we continue to be CC'd on emails from a non-Concord resident regarding a dispute with the town of Natick and the Concord Police Department. Was that
right? All right. We will move on to our chairs, liaisons, and superintendent's report. And I'm going to start with our school committee goals. So Erin, if you could pull that up and share that, that would be great, just so everyone can see what we're talking about. And I'm just going to quickly go through kind of where we're at from a status perspective. I think we, maybe 2 meetings ago, we went over these 2 meetings ago. So our professional practice goal on communications, oh, look at, now we've got Erin's on top of mine. Thank you. So it was to develop new communication channels to share the business of the committee with the communities we represent. So we've actually done a lot this year in terms of communications, and we've had community coffees. We are building our subscriber list. I didn't check in with Dr. Hunter to see if we've actually met our
doubled
goal.
it.
I think we doubled it. We did double
We've
it.
exceeded our goal, I believe.
Exceeded our goal. I love that.
Really
Yes.
shocking.
And
to all.
really, when we say that, we're really asking people to get another email from the district. I mean, when they sign up, that's what they're signing up for. The subscriber list is an email that you
I
get.
thought
from
that
the
goal was quite ambitious.
Yes, so that was great. We've been using Dr. Hunter's social media, and Erin, I'm going to pull mine up so I can just scroll a little quicker. Sorry. We've had quarterly updates. We were on the parent newsletter. I think next year we're definitely going to look to have like a little section on Lori's district bulletin that we can make, small updates just so people know we're still here. And we have definitely been reviewing other school committees' actions and procedures. So Alexa and I this year started the Chairs Roundtable, and we will continue to do that next year. All of the committees that we partner with have been reseated. They're in the process of being reseated. So there'll be some new players to the
One of
committee
which will be
roundtable.
Sarah.
Sarah Wilson is the chair of Carlisle, so she'll be joining us at those meetings. And those have been really, really helpful. We've actually talked about it at the chair's breakfast in Concord, like suggested to other committees, like it's really helpful. Like if the select board even had chairs from other areas, if finance committee had chairs from other areas. So we're trying to socialize that a little bit because I do think it's been helpful for us. And so we're pretty good in the communications department. The budget, our professional practice goal of budget, which was to have our budget workshops, which we did all that early on in the year. And just to continue to understand the finance committee's guideline process. We started that in the fall, and we're going to continue work with the finance committee on that. Our student-centric goals, we're going to hear actually a lot tonight from Kristen Anderson on student wellness. So you can see in terms of status, we have a lot of things happening tonight. So we will mark those complete when we're done. And we're going to hear the final STAR 360 data and the reading data in June at our, I think it's at our June 13th meeting. So we'll see that. And let me see, so student wellness, we've got budget, and then our DEIB goal. We've continued to do that. We had a great meeting. I don't know if anyone has gotten who wasn't here had a chance to watch it, but Andrew did a phenomenal job with this presentation. It was really, really great. We sent that around to everyone. There's just so much that's happened this year. So we felt really good about that. And I think our meeting was supposed to be an hour, and I think we're an hour and a half, an hour and 45. We just really, for those of you that were here, it was really great. So if you haven't gotten a chance to see it and you weren't here, you might want to take a look at that. We will just continue on in that matter. We have the one thing that we have to get back to, and I'm part of this committee, is the CCTA hiring committee. That is kind of an ongoing project that they've been doing a lot of work with Wellesley College. Andrew talked to us about that, about different hiring fairs that he's gone to. So we'll bring you more of an update once that group gets together again. And I think that's about all we had there. So that's just a general update. We've finished a lot of things. There was one thing we did not accomplish this year, and I will just call that out, which is our forum. And we are definitely going to do a mental health and well-being forum in the fall. And what we had decided a couple of weeks ago was really that this time of the year, we would not get enough people to come to that and really to do a good job with it. We want to have it as a kickoff versus an end of the year. Kind of, can you make it there? Because I think we're all feeling a little pressed in the spring, and I think parents generally feel pressed.
And I think we need to make that part of our like summer work to
Yep.
make sure that we stay on top of that planning, really narrowing in on what we want to talk about, and then of course, scheduling the date.
So that's just a,
One thing on that,
Yep.
I think in the last meeting you had asked if anyone wanted to be involved in that, and I meant to email
Yes.
you, but I would
I
love to.
think you already did.
Oh, okay, I
You
wasn't sure
actually
if I
did.
Okay.
You actually did.
Thank you.
So we will keep you involved in that. And then just Carrie, for you, we have a school committee drive that once your email is situated, you're added to the drive. And so you'll have access to everything that we keep on there, and everything that's on our drive is really public information. So you'll get that as soon as we get your email situated. All right. And
Question, our protocols are different, in my opinion, from many other districts in terms of our communication. Everything has to go through the chairs, and just
Yes.
Carrie aware of that. Okay.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll have a meeting and we'll kind of go over all of our protocols, and we'll meet with Dr. Hunter. So we have a document that the new member onboarding group was working on this year, like what to do in the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And so even though you've been a Carlisle member, it's just kind of getting adjusted to the regional side of things. Okay, so we'll work to set something up in the next week or so, if that's good with you. All right. Do you have anything else to add on the school committee goals?
No, just that as we continue to sort of look at them, if you find something individually that you think that sort of we missed or whatnot, just give a shout and a holler. I think I've appreciated this as a chair, this document in its specificity has helped keep us on track, especially as we plan agendas and whatnot. So I do think it's a good tool to continue to use. And everybody should be keeping an eye on it so that nothing slips through the cracks.
Yeah, and certainly if we've forgotten anything, please remind us, because we need help sometimes in that area. All right, so that was all I had, and I will give it to Dr. Hunter for the final strategic plan.
Great, thank you. So we had spent some time, and I say we, kind of looking at Bob and especially Kristen, working with the leadership team here to provide metrics that feel measurable and can hold us accountable over the coming 5 years. So that's the change that's happened since you last saw this, especially if you were on the larger committee. A few that I thought I'd highlight, I'm not going to go through all of them, obviously. Under multiple paths to success, we're striving, committing. What I think one piece of feedback that we heard very loud and clear was to aim high and put in metrics that are not only realistic, but inspirational too. So I think some of these are more inspirational, and hopefully we can strive to reach them. Others I feel are realistic. I think this first one being in that category of increasing student performance by 10%. As measured on our assessments, and I won't go through all of them, but we definitely are committing to wanting to factualize and make that rebound happen off of the pandemic. Mental health and well-being, student survey feedback demonstrating that at least 50% of the students see improvement in well-being, life, homework balance, and homework practices. And subsequent to that, as measured in the youth risk behavior student survey, student stress is cut in half from 2022 measurements. I think, to me, that's among the most important data that's here. It reflects outcomes in other places for sure, but seeing, our numbers get back to less than 20 and 25% of our 6 through 12 students in depression, anxiety, or self-harm kinds of thoughts is just by far the driving priority.
And Lori, sorry, I'm looking at
That was 2.3. If you're trying to map it
I'm sorry.
against.
The student feedback surveys, are those done through that pair thing, or are they just sort of intermittent ones done in-home base
So we've been
or?
looking for a new data platform.
Yeah.
And so our data platform that we've been looking for has should have the ability to do our own surveys. So what we're proposing as a metric is to design a student wellness survey and culture survey that we give annually.
Okay.
And so we can track all of our progress.
So what you feel we have baseline data, and then we would create a survey
Yeah.
that would sort of continue to
Yeah,
track.
I think we're trying to find a formative way to measure progress in between the
Oh, yeah.
formal youth risk behavior surveys.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
And would that be done in this fiscal year or is that farther out? Next, I'm talking about FY 24.
The data platform selected this school year. We're pouring everything into it right now, the data. So then the next step would be to take the mental health team and take all of the surveys that we give. So the youth risk behavior survey, the equity survey, and so forth. Wellness surveys, challenge success surveys, and meld their questions into one survey that we could give to kids annually. to
And that's
measure.
all gonna be done in-house or
Okay, so it would be our proprietary.
Yeah,
even if we're borrowing challenge success, we have to.
we just take the style of the question.
Okay.
But there's lots of like,
there's-
a big package that a lot of school districts use is called Panorama. Yeah, they have a survey that they use. So, but there's lots of them that you can sort of take from.
Under inclusive culture, I think the one I certainly want to highlight here is by 2025, 20% of newly hired administrators, faculty, and staff will identify as people of color. 100%, this is ambitious for sure, 100% of these staff will be retained from year to year. The goal here is to close the gap so that we're closer to the 25% diversity in the student population with a more diverse staff, and that we focus highly on retention. And then finally, in the innovative environment thread, creating outdoor space options, at least one additional one per school with sun shelter, which was very much stressed by the committee. At least one working garden, and we're partway there as different schools have some of that up and running already. And then looking at the food, which I really love is in this plan, adding one new meal of a multicultural offering every semester. So I think you'll hear more quantitative pieces to this. It's not 100% quantitative, but there's a lot here that will be very measurable, and we'll be able to bring you regular updates and progress on.
Great.
So the next part of this work will be the big rollout, which will be this fall. I think it's better timed to the start of the school year and project the next 5 years for the community, students, staff, everyone to take and see the final product at that point. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Goal 4.5 with the district-wide calendar, I think is so useful, especially because we have so many community members who are members of many different schools. But is that something you anticipate having up and running
Well, yes,
for next year?
not for lack of trying even before
Understood,
now.
okay.
We're looking at a new webpage this summer. So to me, that's a critical tool that the website
Yeah.
that we're going to look at, we'll have to have, and then we need to build habits at the schools that they're actively using the tool there. We sort of pseudo do it now, and even in the current website, but if it's not thorough, it's not useful.
Right.
So it'll be part of the page
So
launch.
potentially as early as this fall, we,
Yes.
okay.
There's
Ambitious.
nothing like the start of a school year to build a new calendar.
No, sure, but again, I'm ambitious. I was just curious.
Yeah, that's the hope.
I just want to thank everybody on the big committee who did all this work. And I would hope that not necessarily in this plan, but in our annual superintendent goals and school committee plans, that we can add an environmental sustainability into our yearly goals, because I think we hear very loud and clear from at least the Concord community about environmental sustainability, not just in our schools, and then collaborating with the town and our sustainability director. That's all. Thank you.
Agreed.
Am I correct that we'd consider these to be driven by the administrative leadership? It's not a school committee formal document here. It's rather something generated by administrative leadership. Is that so?
And the committee that.
Fed by
Fed by
the
community,
50
yep.
of us in that room. Okay. I agree with you, Dr. Hunter, about the value of some quantitative data in here. Where I see a couple of examples of it is is the starting line, so to speak, July 1? Where's the benchmark from which we measure anything? I'm not,
Yeah,
it really isn't spelled out here.
If you look at each number, like it says 1.2, we've tried to start going through each initiative and hyperlinking it to a baseline for each one. So we've started already trying to capture that. So it depends on what the initiative is. But for example, if we're using that 1.1, since Laura used it as an example, those MCAS scores that we would be using as the baseline would be the 2023, meaning the spring we just gave. So we don't have them yet, but that's the style that we get them in, that's located in there.
Do you consider any of these to be, as the jargon goes, stretch goals, ones that might be challenging for us?
Yep.
Absolutely.
What would you call out as some of the more daunting or ambitious goals?
I mean, I think two of the ones that I brought to the forefront here today are 50% of the kids reducing their stress seems like a stretch goal, given the environment we're in currently. And I think 20% diverse hiring is a stretch. It's certainly something we're always working on, and sometimes the position that becomes available and the pool of people that are available all have to come together. So I think that could be a stretch, but we heard loud and clear, especially on that one through the equity audit, aim high and show us the progress, and we'll, be understanding of maybe coming up short, but the goal is to hit it. At least at the beginning of the 5 years, I'm going to say we're going to work really hard to hit all of these.
Is that 16 now? Is that right?
Diverse staff. I think it's a little less than that.
What's
The percentage.
Percentage, which is
where are we right now? It's almost there. It's not
Yeah, it's
there yet.
16, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You remember off of
It's-
Andrew's presentation better than I am. I think why I'm hesitating, because if you split out the teaching faculty from the support staff, it's so much less than the teaching faculty. That to me seems like a real priority area. And
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Ultimately, this will live on the central website, and we'll be able to watch these benchmark data
Yeah.
flow in.
That is the hope.
The hope or the
That is
expectation?
the
plan, that is the
expectation.
plan.
Going.
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Dr. Hunter, for that. Okay, on to our discussion. So I'm going to turn it to Alexa because she's going to do a couple of these. And I'm going to do a couple. So thank you for bearing with us this past week. Alexa's done a ton of work on this in terms of meeting schedules and liaisons and,
So the school committee meeting schedule, I think is quite basic and very straightforward. I don't think there's much to discuss there. I trust you've all received it. There isn't much to be said. What I think will become our next order of business, probably what we do mostly in between meetings, as scheduling is exempt from open meeting law, is trying to schedule some additional summer meetings. One of the things that I noted last year in sort of looking back was we didn't vote on our goals until our October 25th meeting. I want to set us up for doing a lot of the kind of organizational work a little bit more over the summer, which we weren't able to do last year because of people's schedules. That being said, people's schedules are no better this year. So a couple things I wanted to toss out to you all. One, we always strive to have full attendance at our meetings. We can meet when it's just a quorum. I just wanted to, but also recognizing that goal setting and talking about our norms and our protocols are all really really important foundational work. So I don't like the idea of moving forward with meetings just meeting the requirements with a quorum, but just noting that we might have to in some of these cases. I don't like the idea. Not everyone has even given me their schedules, even with just court Lori, Carrie and I think Carrie Rankin and I are the only ones that have done it. There are no July dates that are possible. I mean, and we're talking people out of the country, not like, oh, I could Zoom in from my, beach shack on the Cape. This is time zones. This is, bigger family trips that are, kind of bucket list oriented things where maybe a Zoom meeting is not in order, but I am going to seek to continue to try to get us all together. And so what I'm going to ask, I do have these color-coded calendars like I did last year that I will pass out or email to you all. And then I think what our next discussion will have to be is whether, again, I always strive to want in-person meetings, but we might have to move to Zoom and our, and on an atypical schedule. So stay tuned for that. Look out for those emails. I do want to get them scheduled and I want to get this squared away in the next few weeks. So this is my appeal to you to be looking out on your email so that we can try to button this up.
So right now we have June 6, June 13,
Correct.
August 22.
Yes,
Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
All at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So again, this is a project I like. I like trying to get these logistical things in order. But
I have a question about planning.
Yeah.
I agree with you that it's obviously best for goals to be done as a group.
Yes.
At the same time, I feel like what we've learned in the policy meetings in the last year is that we've had a lot of like really good conversations when the vast majority of people are there. And then when we bring it to the table here, when everybody can come together, it's like, so it's almost a better conversation because
A lot of the
a lot
Stuff's
of things
been
have been
vetted.
worked out. Yeah. And then the people who aren't there. So I actually think like, and I'm one of the people who isn't available in parts of July, but so I actually think it could be beneficial to have some of the like brainstorming sessions over the
Point taken.
summer, even if people, that's my personal opinion.
Actually, I like that perspective.
If other people aren't able to make it.
Yeah.
Because it's not our only chance. Like we.
You're right.
You're gonna see it. Yeah, you'll see it after that and you'll definitely see it in August. So if we had maybe 2 sessions over the summer, try and get.
If you could get to like
Yeah.
one, if I could get to one, that
One
would
of
be
them.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if we all come together as a group in the fall to like really hone in on where we are, that could be.
Is it customary? I don't know. I assume this is okay with open meeting law. Like, let's pretend Carrie couldn't attend. Is it customary that like, not to make more work for someone, but like, should you want to like submit a memo, a couple points or thoughts that they could be introduced like via a surrogate? Like you could say, hey, court, I can't attend this meeting, but here are my thoughts. Could you share them? Is that appropriate? I don't even know.
I'd be very cautious.
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
We,
Okay.
another committee I'm on, we were called out by the town clerk this week for simply sharing a Google document
Yeah.
that we weren't even editing because the potential for editing was there.
Yeah.
And they said, you just got to err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
So I'm no expert on this, but my sense is we can have the most freewheeling conversation any way we want about scheduling, full stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, if someone can't come, can they email something?
If I look at what she has, she's influenced me prior to my
Yeah.
arrival here,
Understood.
and that
Okay.
would be called in violation.
Okay, great.
as a
Yeah.
Point taken.
technicality.
Yep.
It's my guess.
Yep. Okay.
Although I like the idea, we're striving.
Right, I know. We're-
Striving for efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and inclusion, like that's my biggest thing. I'm striving. My goal is to have everybody at the table for this foundational work, but we're a busy bunch.
But even when we did our goal setting, though, we did break off into groups. So, even if you had, 4 people at one meeting, 4 at another, it might be
I
variations
mean, I think
of
that's Carrie's
people.
point.
Yeah, and then in August, we could come together and see what we came up with.
You just need to have quorum,
The quorum. Yeah.
you need one Carlisle,
We need a Carlisle member at each.
or it's just a Concord meeting.
Right. Good point.
Yep.
All right. So stay tuned and just stay vigilant looking at your emails.
Good luck, Alexa.
Thank you. Thank you, Court. You're really throwing a wrench with your fabulous July vacation. Yeah.
It'd be a great summer.
See you in August, Court.
Enjoy it.
Can't control who gets married where.
Oh, you have weddings.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
do you want me to do the?
And then you were
Okay.
also on, yep.
Okay, so
Liaison.
thank you all. We were able to put together what I think is a really strong slate for a vote tonight on our liaison and representative groups. So I am actually, it's your meeting, so I can make the motion. I'm going to move to advance the following slate of members to liaise with and represent the school committee for the following organizations and town committees. To the Carlisle Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, Observer Carrie Patel. The Concord Finance Committee, Alexa Anderson. To the Concord Select Board, Court Booth. To the Concord DEI Commission, Tracy Morano. To PEG Access, Cynthia Rainey. To the Concord Financial Audit Advisory, Court Booth. To Adult and Community Education, Carrie Patel. To CPAC, Carrie Rankin. To Sustainability, which is our in-house committee, Cynthia Rainey. To the Calendar Committee, Tracy Morano. To the CMS Building Committee, Alexa Anderson and Court Booth. To the DEI Strategic Steering Committee, Sharon Witt. To the CCTA Bargaining, Tracy Morano, Carrie Rankin, and Sharon Witt. To the CTA Bargaining, Alexa Anderson.
And I asked that we pull out the CTA and the CCTA.
Sure, we can pull them out. So strike those. And also we're going to discuss the warrant signing so separately as well. So I move that slate. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Let's do discussion, just.
Okay. Oh, good point.
Somebody wants to speak to it? I don't. but
Okay, you're right. Discussion, anybody?
People okay with
Share that list with Erin.
this is going?
Is it all?
I didn't, anyway, yeah. So I didn't know if I could share it in advance because of, again, y'all.
We were
was
afraid to book the
concerned.
meeting long.
We were afraid. But everyone, I appreciate people who did email me volunteering and their willingness to serve in all these positions. We all appreciate it quite a bit. So any more discussion?
So these are our official, these are the groups we're going to liaise with.
Yes.
This can always get updated. Yeah. I mean, I know some of them are important that they be, who's on the adults, the CC, whatever it is, the adult ed committee?
Carrie Patel.
Carrie Patel.
And that's a regional program, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
That works. There are some
Yeah.
things that are tricky. All right, we good? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of this slate?
Aye.
Aye.
Second, did we not?
You did
Yeah, I second.
Protocol.
Okay, so this year, we'll talk on CCTA bargaining and CTA bargaining. Again, I asked for volunteers for these. We wanted to assign them early. I think for a couple reasons. One, we anticipate that they're going to be extensive. And two, because we knew, we wanted to plan and potentially, you said even maybe start earlier than had been traditional in the past. So we just thought is if we're doing this kind of thing, we wanted to get on it early. And additionally, because the ask is significant, it might have impacted someone's ability or willingness to take on like a heavier liaise situation. So that was sort of our rationale. So we can talk about them separately. So again, thank you to everybody who was willing to step up to the plate. So for CCTA, the CCTA bargaining group, Tracy Morano, Carrie Rankin, and Sharon Witt were the nominations. I would move to nominate Tracy Morano, Carrie Rankin, and Sharon Witt to the CCTA bargaining group. Is there a second?
For purposes of discussion, sure, second.
Okay.
So Does any of those three, have they bargained with either of the units before?
I guess not.
So I would propose that Court Booth join the team and we remove one of the Concord members.
I did negotiate with
Is-
them last go round.
Okay, for purposes of the discussion, is we also have a need on the CTA. So if we're going to have the same issue, I mean, I don't know, Court, would you be, if it's so needed to be, would you be willing to do both? I think we're talking about probably a dozen meetings each.
Oh, easy.
Yeah,
More than that.
yeah.
These are protracted,
Right.
no question about it. Yeah.
Well, and I think that part of the, we've done the smaller bargaining units because you've now bargained with 2 units. I've bargained with 2 units. So I mean, I think that bargaining is bargaining. You know what I mean?
I'd like to take a vote.
Okay.
If Mr. Booth is willing to serve. I think the CCTA experience will inform the committee about the CTA bargaining. And I think the people who will learn a lot from hearing how that bargaining goes. So I think that
Traditionally, that is what has happened. I don't know if that will
Yeah.
be true this
And
time.
again, I was working with who stepped up to the plate here.
I always consider this a very different conversation
Okay.
and I never think it goes down like this. So I misunderstood.
Alexa, I don't want to bump somebody who is vying for this lovely responsibility.
Well, I think
I don't mean
it's,
it
we
that
don't
way.
want to give you both.
But I'd
Yeah,
be,
That was the thought.
I'd certainly be
Could put
willing
it into
and
place.
able to take one of them on. CCTA is probably the one that would be where I could add more value, but that's my opinion. You all could.
I certainly learned a lot in my first go round. Learned from what the CCTA did and it helped inform me with bargaining with the CTA
sure.
because I had never done it before.
But let's sort
Would
things
you
out
want to
with
do?
Yeah, what we could also, I think, given that you sort of misunderstood the assignment, if you will, and I don't want to put Court on the spot about with respect
do
to
it
2
another day.
units. Why don't we table this discussion and move it towards next week, if you will, Lori, and maybe put that on our June 6th agenda?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Alexa, through you, might I ask that you share with us which members thus far have said CTA is a maybe for me?
Wait, say that again.
Well, you mentioned CCTA.
Oh, CTA.
We have initial ideas.
Even me.
Coming forward for CTA.
Yeah, you and me. I mean, you were a little bit more vague. You said I would be interested in bargaining, and then I worked with who the other respondents were,
I understand.
saying that they had an interest, and I
Okay.
sort of pieced them together in a way that I thought was equitable and
Very good. Thank you.
and whatnot. So,
Okay.
so yeah. Okay, so we can table that for June 6th. We won't advance that piece of the slate today. And then the final piece that I wanted to talk about was nominating warrant signers. So Carrie, you might not know this. Traditionally, we have had really majorities of our 2 committees as warrant signers. So almost everyone has been a warrant signer in the past. It's been interesting this year, both the Concord Select Board, the Concord Finance Committee, the chairs, we've all been talking about how to lighten the load a little bit for people. And when I had solicited requests for who would be willing to be a warrant signer, that was lighter interest than some of our other committees. And we had talked last year about moving to a single warrant signer, which is very common practice in a lot of other districts. I think it's actually the preferred.
You do it in Carlisle.
Right.
I was gonna ask, why do you need 4? And are you saying
Great.
you just want 4 people at any given time?
Yeah, and so
Well, no, so typically
it was just sort of common practice.
at the region, we had 4. And at CPS, we had 3. So it wa-
quorums,
It was
really.
basically a quorum and everybody gets every single warrant. So that will not change. Everybody will get the emailed warrants. So you can take a look at that. And we talked about doing it last year. We didn't move towards doing it. Bob came to us at the beginning of last year. He's experienced with single signatory warrant signing. So he'll help us convert to that. And I think at this point, it makes sense because we all have access. Anyone can ask a question on the warrant. And again, all questions go through the chairs, but everyone has access. And I just think that it becomes tricky also if they have to chase anyone down to, I need one more signature or whatever, like I don't want to complicate that. And we didn't have a high level of interest.
Yeah, and we had 2 enthusiastic
Yes.
people interested.
So this, I think, could be the year to do it.
Quick responses. Anyway. Court.
Can I speak a little more to process?
Sure.
My understanding is that whether we have one signer or multiple, any one member can put a hold on a warrant.
Absolutely, yes.
What I think would
Or
be
ask
helpful-
questions.
what I think would be helpful to me is to clarify that a little more. Let me give you an example. On at least one occasion, maybe 2, I posed a question and the presumption was I was putting a hold on it.
Yeah.
When indeed in fact, I wasn't.
Just had a question.
It's a question, yeah.
So shame on me. I should have said, this is not a hold, this is a question. So my
Shame on me for making an
colleagues here
assumption.
is, if you pose a question,
Yeah.
if this sounds all right to you, Bob, we should be explicit. This is a hold or this is not a hold.
Good idea.
Pending an answer.
Yeah.
Sure, great. And then Cynthia and I briefly texted today about if we move forward with this, another thing that we are going to explore for future meetings is putting warrants, grants, and minutes on a consent agenda, which we had briefly also discussed last year, but sort of it didn't happen. And I think, I know that you all know that we've been striving to make our meetings efficient and inclusive and all of that. So I think that would be that. I texted right back, you're speaking my language. So so the warrant will go in that consent agenda as well. So it's just another way to make sure things don't slip through the cracks by any of us or any of individual members. So.
And Bob, can I just ask one question? So the actual amount gets printed on the agenda of the warrant, correct?
Well,
You can do it a million ways.
Yeah, I know.
I said we have 2 weeks to figure this out.
Figure this
Yeah,
out,
so
yes.
I was just gonna-
It just came out today. so-
Yeah.
So if you're all going to receive it, what's required is that we share it with all members of the board.
Okay.
If you're all going to receive it via email, that requirement's met. I can find out whether we're supposed to post it. But the second thing I would recommend, you could do, is you could appoint an alternate. Let me just make an example. If court's approving them and he's on vacation, if you don't have an alternate, then you'll need a majority of the school committee to approve. So that's your decision. You can either appoint an alternate or you can just have the majority of the committee approve if the primary approver is on vacation. So those are your options.
I would hope we move in the direction you're suggesting.
The alternate.
We need to expedite some of these.
Okay, so.
volunteer to be an alternate.
Wow. Okay.
I'll volunteer to be an alternate.
Wow.
I know, like that's dark.
Contrast
Anyone
to
else want to be
my.
an alternate?
I'll be third subaltern.
Okay.
Ah.
Anyone will be an alternate.
Okay, this is very collaborative. So I am going to move to make these appointments for everyone's consideration. I am going to move that we appoint as the CPS warrant signer, Cynthia Rainey, as the CPS warrant signer alternate, Carrie Rankin, as the regional warrant signer, Carrie Patel. And
Let me just ask first, Sharon, would you like to be the alternate?
would you
Because you did
prefer?
express interest.
Would you prefer to be the alternate?
Great.
And then I will appoint as the CPS warrant signer alternate to be Sharon Witt. Can I have a
CC.
second?
Second.
CCRST, sorry.
Discussion, everybody happy with that?
Thank you to the warrant signers.
Wow, that's
But if we could get the minutes and the grants and this.
Yeah. That'd be really helpful.
If anybody could pull off an item from the consent calendar and select board, they even discuss minute changes
yeah,
in that.
in that consent
So
agenda.
it doesn't preclude discussion. It just
Okay.
wraps it all together.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
All right. Any more discussion?
I just want to be sure Carrie knows, Bob will loop with you. It's an electronic approval, so you won't have to
Yeah.
drive over or anything like that.
Even easier.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll just admit what I did the very first time that I was a warrant signer. I printed out the entire warrant and I was going through it with a highlighter. And I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to be doing. And I got a call from Krista Vasquez and was like, do you think you could maybe think about approving it? And I had no idea what the time frame was. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. So
Tracy,
it
did
just, I approve.
The region, did she update her distribution? Because it's still going to.
Yes, I saw Sarah was on that.
Sarah was on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sarah's still on.
You got it.
Yeah.
Can you get to ask
But
Chris?
Sarah was on
Swap
today.
for
So
Sarah,
I always have to-
Just
She was on
immediately, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you guys for being flexible and amenable to this. Can we take a vote? All in favor?
Hi.
Hi, awesome.
If
Thank
I
you guys so much.
accidentally approve CCRS warrant, please forgive me.
That's fine. All right.
Yeah, that gets confusing.
Forgive me, but we won't process it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, Alexa. That is a huge amount of work that just got done. So we love that. And we will talk about bargaining at our next meeting. On to our presentation from Kristen Anderson, our Assistant Superintendent on mental health and wellness. And there was a presentation that was already shared. I think Erin is probably going to share it with us.
I'm going to share.
Oh, you're going to share it.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're trying to
perfect.
get the video to,
Okay. I like it. Are you going to stand too? I love that.
I am.
I love that. Okay.
Oh, wow. It's like a TED Talk. You're going to walk around with the mic?
I need a big red dot. I'm gonna look out like, but I'm gonna try.
I'm hoping this helps with some of the video choppiness that seems to happen when Erin does. it
Oh,
from
interesting.
home. Yeah.
I just have this way, so I hope you can see it. That too much?
No, it's great. It's great.
So I'm really excited to present this to you because I know this is a topic that you are.
I think you actually have to hold the mic because he's going to come out of the room and tell us to hold the mic. He's going to hold it.
I might break out into song. I mean.
We would enjoy that.
Should I turn it on?
No, I think it is on. So we're not going to hear it in the room, but our audience at home will hear you. Lovely voice. Yes.
It's on?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a topic that's very important to you, school committee, and to everyone in our communities. The mental health and wellness of our students. So I'm going to start by telling you what the problem is, because I think it's probably the most important issue facing our school committee and the health of our young people today is that we do have a mental health problem here in Concord. There is a mental health crisis, especially for adolescents in the country. So you have seen all the reports from the Center for Disease Control nationally. This is the numbers of depression, anxiety, stress, suicide ideation, self-harm, and so forth are very, very high for teenagers. So that is reflected in Concord as well in our data. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the problem and then talk about really get into detail about our plans to address the problem, what we're already doing, and then happy to answer any questions about any of this. So this is an issue that I work on with the mental health team, pre-K to 22, age 22 mental health team. You can see listed there the members, which is all of our guidance counselors and school psychologists, preschool through age 22. And we meet monthly on this.
Kristen.
Yeah.
When are we gonna do questions?
Let's save it for the end.
Fine.
Yeah, because it's very thorough.
Thank you very much.
Youth mental health problems are prevalent and consequential, yet wildly misunderstood and unaddressed. So in that CDC piece that I mentioned, it said 1 in 3 teens struggles with mental health, 1 in 3, so 33%. 75% of lifetime mental illness emerges in adolescence. And their definition of adolescence is age 12. So if it feels like it's getting younger and younger that you're hearing about kids struggling with mental health issues, it's because that is what's happening. And then 50% of those struggling never seek help. I'm so good about that age. All right, so I have presented to this body before on the youth risk behavior survey. But we know from that survey and every other survey that we give that this is an issue in Concord as well. So I just linked to the presentation so you can see them all. The youth risk behavior survey from 2012, 14, 16, 18. We didn't give it in 2020 and then 2022. We also give the challenge success surveys. We did the well-being survey in 2021 during COVID. And of course, we gave the equity survey. All of those ask questions about students' well-being. So you can look through any of them. And when we see that data, and I'll show you a few snippets, even though you've seen the larger pieces, what you notice is that we have an issue. And then the second thing that you notice, if you break down the data, is that the groups that struggle the most are historically marginalized populations of students. So particularly our students who identify as LGBTQ+, our low income students, our BIPOC students, and our students with disability. And that's true nationwide, and it's also true here. All right, so here are, I think, 3 slides from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, last administered here in Concord at the middle school and the high school at 2022. So I just put this overall slide up here to remind you, we had risky behaviors that increased and some that decreased, but these are the increases. And I just pull out among the increases, this is 6th grade, 8th grade, and then high school. In the 6th grade, depression increased by 11%. That doesn't mean it's at 11%. It actually increased by 11%. And at 6th grade, I think it's in the 50% range, something like that. Self-harm, 16% increase. So, and you can see depression at the 8th grade level up 10%, self-harm 6%. At the high school level, stress from academic workload increased 7%, stress from pressure at home 9%, depression increased 5%. Sources of stress. So you can see we also increased here. School and academic workload went back up higher with our, you can see our 6th graders, 8th graders, and then these are our 9th through 12th graders at 65% experience high levels or somewhat high levels of stress, 65%, more than half. This is really concerning, even when you compare us to towns around us. For example, Acton, Boxborough gives the same youth risk behavior survey. Their number is not as high. This is the number. When we look at our strategic plan, we want to cut that in half, and we think we can do it. So really concerning data. Similarly, depression, as I mentioned before, the numbers of depression have gone up. You can see variations, 6th grade, 8th grade, 9th through 12th grade. The reason I put this slide on here, though, is for you to look at the vast majority of the kids who struggle with depression identify as from a historically marginalized community. So, for example, 60% of students who identify as non-binary have struggled with depression. Does that make sense? I'm saying that. So we've learned in every area of public health, that you actually want to get people the information, you want to get students the information they need 2 to 3 years before they actually have to put it into action. So the example that you'll see in every research study is smoking cessation. So when we started as a nation, but also here in Concord, when we started in the late 70s into the 80s, doing smoking cessation or don't start smoking, we saw a decline because we started that program in Concord in 4th and 5th grade. And so students never really picked it up. And so that's what we've seen in the youth risk behavior survey. The number of kids who have tried smoking has gone way, 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 way down over these years. So for mental health and wellness, we want to get the students the information 2 to 3 years before they're ever going to need it. How would you help a friend who's struggling with this, for example? What's the sign of depression? Change of behavior, those kinds of things. So we have lots of plans, as you saw the strategic plan Dr. Hunter presented tonight, to address the problem. So that's the strategic plan link there. We have one of our 4 pillars addressing mental health and wellness. So right away, one thing that we identified as a mental health team was that the care finder service that we used was not adequate for our need. So we used interface from the William James College, and they didn't place any families with online therapy. So right away, there was a pandemic, that was a problem. So we started looking for another service. We did a pilot of this company, Care Solace. So for a while, for about 3 months, we had both services. We found this one to be really answering all of our needs. What happens is a family will call or the guidance counselor will call on their behalf, and the family gets hooked up. I'll say this really slowly because it's so impressive. The family gets hooked up with a therapist of their description, whatever they want, whatever language they're talking, if they are struggling with a particular issue, whatever they need within 24 hours. 24 hours. It's called a warm handoff. So there's an actual person who's texting the parent, who's conversing with the parent. So we've had a tremendous amount of success.
Sorry, I just can't see those numbers. Can you just talk through some of those numbers, like usage and stuff? What is that data?
This data is, it's a whole stack of data, but it's basically asking who's looking for help. Is it families? How old are the kids? There's no individual identifiers, but what's the age range? So are they elementary age or the middle school age, high school age? Or it could be their parent, it could be anyone, it could be one of our staff members. So all of those kind of demographics, and then who they get matched with. So we actually get the names of the therapy groups or individual therapists, if they stay with them. We also, the great thing about this service, as opposed to the interface service, is that families put in the type of health insurance they have. So right away, the Care Solace person is asking, do you take this health insurance? So that's not, the family doesn't have to deal with that. So that's another thing we get. So how many were under a Harvard health plan? How many under Tufts health plan and so forth? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just curious what the usage is of, like, what usage, how much is it?
Oh, sorry, microphone.
Sorry. I'm just curious, if you can speak to like what is up? Like how many kids are using this? How many families are using it?
Yes, yeah. So what we can't measure is like how many students overall see a therapist in Concord, because some people don't use this service. What we can measure is how many families use this and get matched with a therapist. So that's what's up. So 100% of the families that have called and followed through get matched with a therapist through this. So with interface, we were more around 50%. And that was, a lot of that was an insurance issue. Yeah. Yeah. So we have overall, that was the short term. This is the long term. Obviously, mental health and wellness is a very complex issue. We want to deal with it and address it in these 5 ways that I'm going to describe now. So in a minute, I'll talk about the education we're doing with students in terms of mental health and wellness. Then I'm going to talk about training students on their social emotional skills. Then I'm going to talk about MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, through which we are aiming to identify kids who are struggling or lagging in their building of skills, and then bringing them up just like we do in reading and math. Then I'm going to talk about our system of discipline, and what we hope to roll out in the next 5 years is a system of restorative justice in schools called restorative practices, so that discipline becomes a learning experience. And finally, I'm not going to talk about it because I think Andrew has talked about it enough, but the DEIB work and anti-racism work is very, very connected to this. As you saw, our historically marginalized populations are most affected. So starting with learning social emotional skills, and here's where I'm going to attempt to play the first video. There are 3 short videos. We'll see.
We turned the sound off of that one. Right on the keyboard.
Social emotional learning center their mind and body. It reduces their emotional tension so they can be open to new content and material. We find that academic outcomes increase exponentially when students are nurtured, loved, and cared for, that we get much more out of them when they first address those emotional needs. So for us, it's actually an academic intervention and not just emotional. If we expect students to be college and career ready, it's important for us to focus on these skills and competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. Self-awareness is the ability to identify emotions, take time, thoughts, and feelings to behaviors. We find that self-awareness is one of the hardest things for young people, being aware of their own body space and the impact of their emotions on other people. So a lot of what we do is we did through public mediation, through circles, through journaling, how to see their own impact on the world, and then how to shift that into the different voice space. Self-management is the ability to self-motivate, to have self-control, to regulate those emotions. In the classroom, that may be a breathing exercise, or that might be counting 5 or taking a break.
So with students who don't really know how to deal with their anger or don't really know how to resolve conflict, we're giving them a tool that helps them deal with it in a less stressful way.
Social awareness is about embracing the first, showing empathy for others. Activities might include service learning projects, addressing social justice issues. Role playing is a great opportunity for students to address how a person might have felt in a conflict on the playground. See, had some of the very same experiences. I don't believe that we have.
You're in my boat if you have 50 math.
Oh, it's still a lot of people. Relationship skills are important in project-based learning. It's the ability to work cooperatively with someone to resolve conflict. The ones that need the full life may not be the calculus tomorrow, but you have to know how to work in a relationship, whether it's for a coworker or a life partner. You have to know how to handle conflict and how to handle challenges.
Sometimes I make sense that money would come over and start talking fast and saying things.
Is it your job to make things down anymore?
No, it's a form of bullying, and sometimes I'll say sorry to them.
So you choose to be somewhere out and they say, Responsible decision-making is considering the well-being for self and others. It's evaluating the consequences for various behaviors or actions. We do this through shared agreements, one-to-one problem solving, or having students debate the issues.
And we're like, hey, share, this is name. He was like, it's a guy's wall. $50 a week. Which one of us make it? You know what I asked you?
We're truly teaching these students to be productive citizens. We're teaching them life skills. We're teaching them how to problem solve effectively. We're teaching them how to be resilient.
I think of all the millions of dollars spent on Title I and all these intervention programs, and when all is said and done, what do we have to show? I think we're trying to teach technical things instead of devoting some of the resources to teach who you are as a person. Once you know who you are, then learning becomes exciting because you've already established this.
So you heard,
If you can pick up the, yeah, and then turn down the volume on the computer. Sorry.
that better? Yeah.
Thank you.
So you just heard in the video, but what they were talking about is the social emotional skills. The 5 areas, these are called the Castle 5 areas of social emotional learning. And we use an advisory curriculum to teach these. We just adopted at our elementary level responsive classroom. And then Fly 5, this is responsive classroom is the approach that we're having in the whole school. Fly 5 is the curriculum that we teach weekly, starting next year to all of our students. And Home Base is our advisory program in the middle school, and it was created by some teachers at our middle school, but it is completely Castle aligned. So we're excited about that. So we've also changed the elementary report cards for next year. So we're actually going to be reporting on how students are doing in their growth of skills in all 5 areas next year. So this is just the training that we're going through for our elementary teachers with responsive classroom and Fly 5. And the reason I put this up here is to point out that there are multiple opportunities for students, for teachers to learn about both. We were so thankful to receive a huge grant from the Concord Education Foundation. Normally rolling out a program this big would take us about 5 years to get everybody trained up. But their generous support has allowed us to do it in 1 year, 1 school year. So we're starting now at the end of June, and by next year, everybody will be trained. And then we'll have our usual plan for getting anyone new up to speed on the curriculum. And I'll talk about restorative justice in a minute. So the next set of topics I'm going to talk about are mental health skills, which I have just learned in the past 5 years or so, how those are different from social emotional. Often people conflate them, bring them together. So we teach mental health skills through our health curriculum. So we are one of the few school districts that has a robust health curriculum. In the elementary school, we use the Great Body Shop. You might have seen the 2-page magazines coming home. We adopted that, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, after a 2-year pilot. And then at the middle school, it's very unusual. All kids have health all year round. So in most middle schools, it's once or twice a week for a quarter or a trimester or something like that. Here in Concord, we remain having it for all year round because we think it's so important for all of our students. For the reasons I described earlier, we want to get them the information before they really need it. So what are mental health skills? Positive and negative ways to cope. So what do you do if you're feeling stressed out? You know, are you going to go do drugs, overeat, binge watch television, or go for a walk, talk to a friend, reach out to an adult, those kinds of things. So communication skills, how do you tell someone that you're struggling? What do you say when someone tells you that they're struggling?
Progress.
Oh, and I should tell the story. I don't know if you want to tell the story. The mental health curriculum that we use, I could say it's homegrown, although it's national, but it has one of the most wonderful stories to come out of a terrible tragedy. So at our high school, we have just adopted Brain Health Boot Camp, which is probably the best piece of software I've ever seen, educational software. You want to tell the story?
Sure. So we've been working with the Chase Bjork Foundation. Chase was one of our students. He committed suicide January 31st, 2020. We've stayed very in touch with the family. Part of their grief turned into action.
Yeah.
I'm using my mic, yeah. The family really switched gears and has become very involved in providing tools and resources with the goal that no family go through what they have. Chase's older brother is really the lead design on this piece of software, and it's a self-guided learning environment for kids to learn about mental health, signs, symptoms, the biology of it. And I think for us, it's an anchor now to the high school health curriculum. And I think one of our biggest goals, as you probably are taking away from all of this conversation, is to normalize these conversations, but also to help kids know there's some physiology to it, and that it's not just a stigma that there's something wrong with you. So we're really grateful for their partnership and support. They are on a pretty big mission to bring this out at a high level, make it available to schools everywhere free of charge. So, oh, wow. Yeah.
Really wonderful.
So are we we're in a pilot?
We have been piloting.
Been piloting. Any other schools piloting or just us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they had two
Good.
to start out, us and some schools in Boston, and now it's nationwide pilot.
Great.
Yeah. Being part of a pilot also helps us. It makes it great for us as we give them feedback and so forth. So the next flower petal of ways that we're improving is a multi-tiered system of support, much like I've described to you in past meetings for reading or math. I think I'm gonna not show the video. because
Sure.
the feedback is a little, annoying.
And we know, and we have the presentation, and so we had access to the video before this, so people can watch it, or some might have already watched it.
Everybody can watch it.
All right, so as you know from previous presentations, there are 3 tiers to a multi-tiered system of support. Tier 1 is the education that all students receive, and we make sure to have this comprehensive along the lines of the standards. We make sure that we measure that every student's getting it. So that's what I talked about in this case, mental health, for example, and social emotional learning. That would be what we're teaching in health classes and what we're doing in the advisory curriculum. So then we have a screener that we use to see, okay, who's struggling? So we want to catch things, as they say, upstream, tiny little trickle before the issue becomes a big, huge ocean. So we're looking for students who have a tiny little indicator that they don't have a skill. They don't know how to name their own emotions, for example, and therefore, how could you manage your emotions if you can't name them and understand what's happening to yourself? So then we have smaller groups that are working to improve their skills in specific areas that we've outlined through these screeners and assessments. Does that make sense? So this is really what we're beefing up for mental health and social emotional learning. Tier 3 is much more intensity. So this is usually where a kid is already in crisis. They are having some kind of serious trauma response. They are having school refusal. There's something like that. This is a much more intense, but also evidence-based response that we would do in school. And then we would work with outside folks to help the child. Does that make sense? We can't work on skills if a kid is in a full-blown crisis. So we have to calm the situation down and get them to where you can actually figure out how to solve and how to work with the student. So this is the triangle I've shown you with reading and with math, but it basically shows the social emotional continuum all the way through. Here are all the ways we might address something from tier 1, tier 2, and then, as I just mentioned, the crisis response and the behavioral system as well, all the way through. And that's just one school. So as a part of this, we want to catch any issue before it becomes a big issue, right? So we need a screener. And then for anyone who, student who gets identified as perhaps a problem is there, we give a bigger assessment, we involve the parents and so forth. So we've been looking for one screener that we could use kindergarten through grade 12. So for a couple of years, we've used, I think maybe 5, the PAIR, which is out of Walden Behavioral Health. And they only have a system for middle school and high school. So we've been using that, but we've been looking for something that's more comprehensive. Because as I mentioned before, these things start earlier. You can catch it earlier. So for this past year, we've been piloting the DESA, and we have 4 big pilots happening in our school district this year. So we have, for example, all of our 9th graders took this DESA screener. 8 questions. Older kids report on themselves. Younger kids, like we did one class at Willard, the teacher reports on them. And then we see, okay, is this whose teachers are already talking about? Do we need to go deeper? Do we need to give a 60-question questionnaire? Do we need to do some kind of other testing? Do we need to involve the parents? All those bigger questions. This is just trying to get that first level of information. There's another one called Strength and Difficulties Questionnaire. We haven't done that. We might do it next year. These are social emotional skills screeners. This is a mental health screener. All right, so the last area I'm going to talk about is what we're trying to do for discipline. This is a long haul. We're not trying to put into place a system of restorative practices next year, but we do want to start walking in that direction. So every school in our districts have made a commitment to do something along these lines. So I'll explain the areas, but I'm not going to show the video. There's also a great video here. All right, so just like multi-tiered systems of support in other subjects, there is a multi-tiered approach to putting restorative practices into a school. So I should say restorative justice practices started actually in the prison system. They actually here at MCI Concord, and was one of the sites a long time ago. And you've probably heard attorney generals talk about how effective they are in that kind of situation. You see fewer people committing the same crimes over and over again, recidivism. So what we hope in schools is different in that we're really trying to have any behavioral infractions, any rules broken, be opportunities for education, right, for kids to learn. So there's 3 levels that we do that. The first is the tier 1, what everybody gets. And what we need is a strong community of talking so we can talk about the hard issues. And we just know each other and people trust each other more. So we're working on this tier 1, which is called community building circles. They're fun. We're trying to do a few. I did one with the high school group last week. It was tremendous fun. Then you move up to tier 2, which is an early intervention. A child has done some small behavior infraction. And there's a way that an adult in the situation can address it. So it sort of takes it down a notch so the kid can learn, and then they can think about how do they restore the trust that's been broken through whatever the action is that they did. So a big difference between a restorative justice practice and a traditional discipline system is that in a traditional discipline system, rules are broken. In restorative practices system, relationships are broken. So you're trying to restore or repair the relationship. And then the very tip of this triangle is for the major serious harm kind of situations. And that's where this is what everybody thinks of when they think of restorative justice, which is these circles with one child or a group of children who might have broken a very serious rule, and all the adults and the children involved as part of that circle. For any of these, involvement in any of these, the student has to want to do it. So it's their choice. And I really encourage you to watch this video. It goes much more into it. I'm sure we'll do much more of it. This is me and an English teacher at the high school running our restorative circle. It was really a lot of fun. And then this is just showing the flower again, all the ways that we're trying to address mental health and wellness in the school district over the next 5 years. We're not trying to go fast. We're trying to do this well. So we're doing mental health education in our health classes, social emotional skill building through our advisory program, multi-tiered system of support to identify and work with kids who are struggling, restorative justice for our discipline system, and all of our DEIB and anti-racism.
All right, thank you. Yeah, please, I would just say, you're probably going to have to turn around and use your microphone if you ask a question.
Oh, yes, true.
Good idea.
All right. She joining us at the table again?
Just like, can you put my
That's right, yeah. Perfect. All right, so we will take questions that anyone has. I definitely have a few. I'll hold mine. Any questions for Kristen?
Just want to make one note about restorative justice and the opt-in. I think everybody knows this, but if you don't opt in, it doesn't mean nothing happens. It means you go down a different path.
Yes.
Okay. Not only does restorative justice have a history in the prison system, it has a history in the Concord courthouse as well, where in the 80s, they looked at Native American practices, actually, because of a pioneering judge out of the Concord District Court. And some very nifty work came out of them as well.
Yeah. It's why everything is circles. You're coming together as a community. There's no one person in a position of power. You're trying to decide something as a community. Yep.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
So I think generally I really appreciate the emphasis on mental health. I've not been shy about the fact that this is something that's deeply important to me, among many other things on this committee, but I think mental health really is a crisis in our community and across the country. So I really appreciate the emphasis, the evaluating K-5 and sharing that information with parents really struck me. The new pilots and access to counseling and efforts to break the stigma. I think that was all really great. I think what my kind of question is I think when I saw this on the agenda, my expectation was we were going to see some of the PAIR data and some of the DESA data and really get an understanding of where we are. And this felt more like an overview of where we hope to be going, maybe. I'm not really sure. I feel like this was a little bit more informative about curriculum enhancements perhaps.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious how, and you mentioned at the end that this is sort of a 5-year plan or vision. How do we know what to look for, or at the end of that, we did well? That we- so
Yeah,
maybe you can speak to
yeah,
Sort of what we
good,
can
yeah.
expect to see.
How-
And then
how
I
we're
do-
gonna
I would
measure it.
Love to understand, maybe not today, but what are we seeing with some of that other data now?
Yep. So the only statistically significant data that we have today is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that from 2022. Everything else that we're trying, the DESA, the PAIR, they're pilots that we can't aggregate the data yet. So I can't give it to
Got
you
it.
yet.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
Okay.
So, we looked at, for example, the DESA, because we gave it to the whole 9th grade. So that's over 100 students. So that's generally thought of as significant. And you would want to see growth from one administration to another administration, but we haven't had a whole year of school. So we've only had one administration of it.
Yep.
So we don't have the data yet.
This time next year, we would have more data, or, okay.
Well, we're probably.
Okay.
Yeah, what we've decided, what the mental health team decided is to do a second year of pilot with the DESA K to 12.
Okay.
So that's where we're going for next year.
Okay.
So you would see DESA data, but at the same time, that's only a screener for social emotional learning, not for mental health.
Okay. And then will you be setting goals around this work of like, how do you evaluate these programs and determine they're worth investing in? And, how do you evaluate all of that?
Yeah. So the curriculum programs are pretty easy. So that, it's just like math or anything else. Did the kids learn the skills? Can this one divide fractions? And so forth. That's easy to measure. What is much, much harder to measure is mental health. That's why easing out social emotional learning and mental health, how do you really say we're healthier as a community? We're not sure yet. How do you, apart from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, kids self-reporting, how do we say that we're healthier? So we have a lot of measures that we're trying, but the science isn't there yet. So we're at the cutting edge. But
No, again, there's a lot that I really am excited about. I'm just, aside from seeing picture, I'm just not sure how we would have ever know that it's working.
Yeah.
We as a committee, not you are in the buildings and whatnot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to end up pivoting over to the outcomes and looking
Why are
at
the-
discipline and behavior data,
Yeah.
attendance.
hospitalizations, attendance, all of that sort of indicator that we do have already,
Yeah.
and then trying to look for causality and
Okay.
whether what we're doing is helping. So I think it's going to be
Like-
a
like for
mixed
your
bag.
Even if your metric on the strategic plan, like reducing stress by 50% would, could you, and again, causality, I remember when you and I sat on that, that board at Emerson, and we were on it with a team of psychiatrists and all that, and they were like, no one is doing causality studies anymore. No, everyone's fearful of talking about the causality of things and linking those. So I know in the scientific world, the mental health world, because that was sort of where we were. It's obviously very hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we'll just have to sort of look at the metrics, and this is going to sound almost unprofessional, but feel almost if
You're going to
metrics are indicating a move in the right
You're
direction.
going to look at a lot of data and it's going to feel better. You're going to hear different things from the kids than we're hearing right now.
Yeah.
You're going to hear qualitatively a lot of different focus areas from the teachers right now. They will absolutely report how much time they're putting in on helping kids stay regulated to a varying degree of ways of that, how that plays out. And I think that what a great report that is if they get more instructional time back and say that the kids are self-regulating. So we have to look at it from all fronts.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question.
Okay.
notwithstanding our attention to this, our resources, you tell us that we're an outlier as compared to some of our peer communities. What's our hypothesis as to how that is so?
I could talk about the correlation that we see. We don't know if it's causation, but as I've mentioned, we test in the youth risk behavior survey with 8 other school districts. The largest, we're the second largest. The largest is Acton-Boxborough. So they're right, Maynard, right around us geographically, and where we are in some cases double the stress. We're double the stress in terms of lack of sleep, double the statistics of lack of sleep. So we looked at a measurement of 7 to 10 hours for our middle school kids, 8, 9 hours for our high school kids, and the number of kids not getting that, we're higher in that area as well. So sleep is one. Social media is definitely in there. We have higher access to technology. Those numbers are high. Higher pressure in terms of amount spent on homework, amount of time spent on homework, amount of feeling parental pressure from students. All of those are high also.
So to generalize, what I'm hearing is our kids have more social media access than some of the peer communities. Our kids have more academic stress and time requirements and that helps to explain the differences.
And the lack of sleep. Yeah. Lack of kids getting enough sleep.
As a consequence of these demands that we're all.
There's so many things out there about the relationship between sleep and that social media and phone use. Kids are keeping their phones in their bedrooms and we all know where that goes.
Yeah.
So those even two could be related.
I mean, I can't say anything caused it, but those.
No, I know. I framed it as a difficult question.
What an impossible
We're
question.
looking at hypotheses. We can't pin this down and it's a rather general conclusions we're making about how this could be so.
Yeah.
We need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I have some questions. Maybe during the next budget cycle, if you could bring us the cost of some of these items so we can really show the community what our investment is in mental health. So responsive classroom, is that just a K-8 or pre-K-8? And I was going to ask, where are we with pre-K and mental health? Not that that's the primary concern, but I think it's important that we have that data, collect it and see where we are with our pre-K population as well. And then I was going to ask about the plus 12, I guess I'll call them population. Are we tracking them at all?
Yep. Happy to answer those questions. So when we had an elementary adoption committee for 2 years previous to this, we had preschool educators on that. And the curriculum that we chose doesn't include preschool, although you can, sort of tailor some of the kindergarten. Instead, for them, they wanted to go with a curriculum that does. So there's a curriculum called Second Step. So that's what they're piloting now. So that's preschool. Throughout, you asked about throughout the age span. So for students who are above the age of 18 who are with us, they would have individual education plans that would have those spelled out and the measurements spelled out. So that's kind of a unique to each individual child. And then your other question was about cost. I'm happy to break out the cost to generalize about it. If you think about health as a curriculum area, I would say it's probably our least expensive curriculum area if you compare it to like math or reading or even music.
Just so we can get the 5-5 in the responsive classroom, and that goes through 8th grade?
It goes through 5th grade.
5th grade.
Yep.
And then we just have the health curriculum in the middle school?
And we have home base, which is their advisory, and they wrote their own curriculum.
And then the high school, the health curriculum.
Yep.
I didn't see really mention of challenge success, which I've always seen before.
Yep. So that's do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so Challenge Success is an umbrella program that supports schools in how to look at their structures, their practices, their communication with students, families, et cetera, so that they can start to really address some of these, especially in high performing districts like ours. Because it does bring a different stress to the table that other communities may not have, and definitely is now being seen as a risk factor per se. So
Yeah.
town success is definitely still very much in our world here, and you'll hear that a lot, I think, in June when the principals come through. with the
Right,
improvement
that's,
plan.
I guess that's what I'm seeing there, coming to us, is that it sounds like we know that, not that we cause it, but things are going on in the schools can certainly add to stress and mental health and wellness, right? And it's not intentional to cause these things, but whatever. The other thing is, going forward with the new plan, it looks to me like I just did a little dipping around. There are not that many resources for families on our websites in dealing with how to deal with social media at home, right? Because schools can only do so much, but a lot of it's like Alexa said, having that phone, tablet, computer in the bedroom is certainly going to be a problem for going to sleep. So
there are a lot of resources for parents in that
Not enough.
regard.
right, but
Sure, but again, I think whether we direct parents to those really extensive resources.
I'm not saying we have to,
Develop our own, but yeah.
right, but it's just
No,
something.
certainly not. There's people doing that
We
work.
had Lynn Lyons, who's she's got a podcast that's really aimed at parents, came to our school. And I know that, but sometimes,
Here as well.
yeah, so
Yeah.
sometimes people, it's a ship, it's a person walking by and people just weren't there. But all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh. All of a sudden I have a fifth grader with a phone and I'm struggling. So, I mean, but
Or resources.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think at least just a little pointer to say, we're not going to curate everything for you, but
Yeah, and I think post-COVID, that kind of dropped off. I mean,
Yeah.
prior to COVID, I thought there was not squarely in the district, but in the community.
Right.
A great deal of emphasis talking about the scourge of social media. And again, I just think we've pivoted to different things, and not in a good way necessarily, but I think it is now just one of the myriad things.
I mean, the Surgeon General came out today, just basically doubled down on it and said it's not just a problem, it's a crisis.
I was at the Board of Education this morning with two students and a department chair from the high school speaking with the commissioner and the board about these topics. And I think it was the tip of a very big iceberg that was shared from us and the other districts that were invited, and all hands on deck for sure.
And
People have been slow to recognize it.
you mentioned belonging, right? And challenge success is a big thing to improve mental health is belonging. And I don't need to know tonight, but it just seems like something that we should be pretty aggressive about. And it just doesn't affect a specific populations. That affects every kid in the building.
Yeah.
Buildings, and it's kindergarten through or pre-K through plus 12. So I wasn't at the meeting. I'm going to watch the recording. But I was just hoping that, we can get going with that because it sounds like it'd be a pretty powerful thing to have students feel like they belong, or more students feel like they belong.
Yeah, I think you'll hear Andrew speak to that at the meeting. Really, that's the goal of all the work, is that all kids feel that they belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Just looking at the data, and back in 2020, the youth risk survey wasn't conducted.
We didn't give it.
You didn't give it.
We did not give it.
Okay.
So it was given by the communities that decided to in our group of 8.
Okay.
But since kids were home and we had just sent them home, that was 2020, that was March of 2020, we decided not to add to the stress and give another online survey. Yeah.
Okay.
But about half of the other communities did give it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, are we planning to expand the usage of the Care Solace? I'm sorry.
So anyone can use it. Do you mean like have therapists into the school or something like that?
Is it just the high school or is it aimed at middle school?
Everybody can use it.
Everyone.
Yep. So any parent, child, staff member in the community can use care solace to find therapy or help with substance abuse. So it has both areas.
Probably more adult initiated in terms of either families or counselors starting to get kids connected to services. I don't think it's widely used by the students right now as a tool they solicit on their own. It's mostly families and staff that start the process.
Okay, and just one last question. Are we doing anything to address the specific issues for mental health issues around kids on IEPs?
Yeah,
It's a tricky one, but I'm just curious.
yeah, it would be answered directly in the child's own individual IEP, but we certainly have programs for students who struggle with building either social emotional skills or with mental health, like schizophrenia or something like that. Yeah, good questions.
I have a couple on Care Solace. I was digging around to see how do you find it as a parent? Because I actually had an experience where a parent said, where do I find it? And so just giving that information to parents and maybe even through like the district bulletin, it's been
in
out
my
there.
newsletter about once a month.
Yeah, it's been
We'll
out
just keep
there.
pushing
And
it
I would
so
just
it's
keep pushing
there.
because they don't realize like you can just say, my kid goes to Concord Public Schools and then you get access to everything.
It all goes back to your website.
I know. It's the
I know.
website.
It's like-
Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge with a new website,
Yeah.
but
I know.
start over.
Yeah, and just, to say to anyone listening, you can find it at the high school through guidance, or you can find it on the district website here, or just where to find that PDF can be tricky sometimes. Because I think it's a great resource that as much as you tell people about it, I'm not sure that they know about it.
Right.
And, to just send that, to push that out would be
Might be
great.
worth a standalone email all by itself.
Yeah,
as we go, especially as we go into the
Well,
summer.
I think about the summer
People
and
have
even
resources.
if kids are graduating, and can they continue to use it? Say they're in college, can they continue to use it? They can just say, I went to Concord Public Schools. Or if there's a parent struggling, can they use it?
Yeah.
They can. So I think that's the most important piece to really, push out there, especially getting into summer when people don't always think about the resources they have through the schools. And then can you just talk a little bit about, I love the restorative circle that you did. And, if it obviously nothing that's private, but like, can you talk about how that really worked? Did you have a topic? Was it something that came up organically?
I think we should run a school committee meeting like a restorative circle.
All right.
It's wonderful. So yeah, I can describe what a circle is like. You can do it with any topic. You can do it as part of an academic class, trying to learn something. You can do it just for, I think Cynthia said, belonging. In fact, that's what it's recommended that high school students, for example, do it once a month. So we're starting to think about a pilot in the English department at the high school. So the way you do it is you want about 15 people. Someone is the keeper of the circle. That means they're in charge of the talking piece. So this is a piece that you pass around. And as each person has it, they speak, they answer the question. There is trust within the room. You establish confidentiality within the room. You have chosen as a group your talking piece. So that's like the first thing you do. The whole thing, you go around about 3 times. The hot seat is the one immediately to the left of the keeper. Usually some wait time is given. Surprisingly, if you don't have anything to say or you don't want to say anything, you can say pass, but you have to say pass. So it's a way for everyone to be in the room together, kind of on an equal footing. And you close the circle with a reflection on how it went and what surprised kids. And they loved it. I mean, probably the best, I won't give too many identifying details, but there was a student who was male, really big guy. He was huge, playing a lot of sports and sports gear on. And at the end, when we went around, he had been kind of quiet always adding something to the conversation, but not long diatribes. Some kids had long stories that they told. He didn't. But at the end, he said, I really liked it. I really got to know everybody here. And the whole thing took a half an hour. So as you go around, you can ask questions of belonging, like we did. One of my questions to the group was, when is it time that you felt like you really belonged, a group you really felt like you belonged in? Or you can ask about, what's an important theme in Catcher in the Rye that we're reading, or something like that, something academically motivated. What strategy might you use to attack this word problem? We tried once. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's all I had. Anyone else? You want to? No? No, 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 I'm looking around. I wish I had like the talking piece. Anyone else? No, all right. Well, thank you so much. This was great, as always, informative. And we look forward to hearing more from you at our next meeting. So thank you. All right, we are moving on. We're totally changing gears to the exciting CCHS road update, which is very necessary. I was up there this morning and it's very exciting. So I will let Bob inform us about what's happening.
So it is out to bid,
Okay.
Which is good news. So we had, we worked with the town of Concord's engineering department, Steve Ducray and his team. And bid specs were developed. They've also added on a little piece at the Beatty Center, some of the pavement there. And bids will be due on June 9th, and we'll hopefully have a winning bidder that's in our budget. We do have funds set aside for this. We also we're clear on what our requirements were timeline wise. So in the bid, we included a substantial completion date of August 25th, 2023 for the pavement portion of the work. There are pieces of work that are not going to impact people driving that could potentially be done later. And I think there's some reseeding of grass that needs to happen later as well. But so fingers crossed, in 2 weeks, we'll have a bid, and there's a pre-bid conference as well that happens before then. But so we're kind of looking forward to moving ahead with this, and it's been on the docket for a while.
Mm-hmm. And so you obviously don't know until you award the bid, but when ideally do you think it will happen? Will it be over 2 days, 3 days, a week? Like, do you know what it's going to look like for the high school campus? Because you're going to have to shut it down, right?
It will take some time.
Okay.
But they'll be able to do it. They'll be able to shut off pieces of the road, or either entrance, and then they'll also be able to potentially do half of the road, one side of it. So they'll structure it in a way that people can still access the property.
Okay.
Like summer camps, and because I assume it's happening over the summer.
Yes. Yeah.
Before August 25th.
Yeah. There's community usage throughout the summer, so we'll have to do that. But it is the least. It's really the only time we can't do it during the school year. So.
And will the lighting come after how is the lighting going to?
The intent is to phase it in. That's going to be a subcontractor of the GC, but the intent is to do it all at once. There might be like that would be one that makes more sense. They're going to do the conduits as part of this. So like if they have to install the lights later, it won't be like the conduits will already be dug.
Okay.
So.
And there will always be lighting. So even if you're replacing, like we're always going to have a well-lit area, even while you're in process. Do you think?
I will check on that. I don't know if we specifically asked that, but that's a good question.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll check on that.
Okay. That'd be great.
I was going to ask that question because for town meetings, sometimes they bring in those emergency lights.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to invest in those.
Temporary lighting. Yeah.
I don't remember if that's in the bid, but I'll check.
Okay. That'd be great. Thank you.
So the other thing is, we definitely need to coordinate, the town needs to access the Doug White fields. So we're gonna have to figure out how to, especially, there's a one-way road. Getting people in and out, if we shut it down. So I'm not sure, it's the summer, so is it, we have to be talking to the town about what's going on.
Up there, yeah. And didn't we talk before about like you do it like you would do your street? So like you would do one half of it, then the other half of it. So you would never totally lose access.
We'll have access to the facility.
Yes, so it
Yeah,
all-
we'll coordinate with.
Okay.
Right, but we have a one-way ring road.
Right.
So.
It's big enough. Yeah.
Right, it just requires probably
So
extra.
it's not
police.
doing the ring road.
No.
It's only in front of the BD. So the ring road is not being paved.
No, I understand that, but
Need
it's,
access to.
yes, you have access
To the
to
ring
go
road.
around, but you're gonna have to do one way, following me? So that's not really a wide road. Road up to the Doug Whitefields.
But that's not part of the scope. The road.
No,
She's just talking about getting access
gotta
to
get
the
access to
Walden
the-
Street side because
Side.
that's how you go
Yeah.
up there.
Right.
You have to
We're
go-
gonna have to coordinate all this
Yeah.
with the
Yes.
The
contractor.
town and yeah.
Town.
I mean, it's active, even without kids there, it's an active campus, as you're well aware. So-
Yep.
Right.
Yep. All right. Any other questions on that? Excited that that's happening. So it's been a long time coming since the beginning of the high school build, I'll just say. So this is very exciting.
You think it's gonna come well under our allocated number?
I didn't say that.
Well, that will be good to know about when you get.
That'd be nice.
That'd be a nice surprise, right?
It would be nice. Yeah.
I didn't say that. All right, great. All right, on to, while we're on the CCH campus, campus safety, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about, because I do think it's critical at our high school. I'm going to give you a quick overview first, and Peter's with us, right? He's on Zoom.
Peter and Derek are both.
Okay, great. So we have been talking, Alexa and I had a meeting with Peter and Derek, Dr. Hunter, with Bob about some upgrades that we can do to have better communication at the high school. It's all about communication. So the three things that have been talked about so far have been Wi-Fi calling within the building, 2 Wi-Fi access points outside of the building, so outside of the cafeteria, outside of the office area, and blue lights on the campus, which are lights similar that you would see on a college campus. And so they would have a call button on them and it would go directly to 911. So if there was an emergency on a field outside, we have access because there is essentially minimal cell coverage at different points of the campus. So that was kind of our first meeting, and I will just start with that and I'll let Peter jump in.
Yeah, and really the focus tonight is the blue lights.
Yep.
So Peter's been working with the vendor, Derek's here as well, and are able to
Right.
sort of show you a scope of work and potential locations and talk through some feedback with you. So
Correct. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so as Tracy said, this is when you think about securing the campus in a better way, the emergency communication systems like blue light phone towers and call boxes, I'm sure you've all seen them on college campuses. They're very visible. They're really a visible deterrent in many ways. When you see them there, you feel the campus is monitored. Unlike a college campus where they have a 24-hour security crew there to monitor things, we don't have that. So the way it would work here, when someone pressed the call box, it would dial into the police. So we'd have it go to the dispatch there. In looking at trying to be cost sensitive, how we wanted to lay these out, there's lots of different options. It requires data and electrical to hook these up. So when you look at our campus, Derek will jump in and show you the map in a moment. We did a walkthrough with one of our vendors to look at what the best option would be. And they have units that you can attach to existing poles where we have data and electrical already. And that's going to really save on installation costs, cut down on, trenching for electrical and other things that would have to happen during an install. Aaron, if you could pull up that graphic on the high school. And Derek, could you talk a little bit about this walkthrough with our vendor and the locations that we landed on?
Yep. So basically what we did, as Peter stated, is we looked at the locations on the campus where we already have fiber optic cabling and electrical. Most of these sites that you're seeing, there's a camera in that location. So we were trying to spread them out in a manner where they would be in somewhat accessible and spread them out, and then by the fields. So we have one by the upper field, then one more down towards that next field that I think it's like a lacrosse field. And then on each side of the entrances, Walden and the throw entrance, there'd be one there, and then one down on the lower field that would serve both the football and the 2 baseball and softball fields down there.
And this is just to propose locations after a walkthrough on what might make sense. Again, trying to minimize some of the installation costs that can go with this. Those were things that made sense. If this was decided people want to move forward, we'd obviously want to do a walkthrough with high school administration and others to look at these sites and make sure that everyone gets their input onto how this looks for the campus.
Great. Does anyone have any questions about the blue lights? I know their cost is always a question, so I'll just put it out there. Do you want to talk about, are we prepared to talk about the cost?
Talk about what you have for numbers.
What you have
right
for now,
Peter?
yeah.
Yeah, Bob and I discussed this a bit earlier. He can go over some of it. What we don't have is an installation cost. It will be less than the cost of the product. Until we make a final decision on locations, it's hard to determine what that cost might be. There still might be some trenching involved, and we want to try to minimize that with the electrical and the data cabling, as Derek said. So that part is a little bit in flux till we pin down locations. Bob, do you want to touch on where that final invoice came in for those 5 proposed units? And again, these are just proposed. It's a flexible situation at the moment.
So the quotes were approximately 24,000, just under 24,000, so close to $5,000 a unit. And we would be able to fund, I would say, if you look at 2 of them, they're right next to the athletic fields. So we could reasonably support those being paid for out of the athletic revolving fund. We have another one that's adjacent to it and somewhere between the school, maybe that one would get split between the operating budget and athletics. And then there's 2 units that are more kind of on the behind the school, the lower side of the school, whatever we call that, the front or the back. Okay. So the total cost of 24,000, not including installation. The larger portion of this is the hardware cost. 12,000 from athletic revolving, 12,000 from the budget. It is something that we'll be able to find and absorb 12,000 in the operating budget. And it addresses a significant concern related to safety that we don't have a quick solution for otherwise. And
What's the timeline on how they would be able to, and when they would be able to install it?
Peter, I think Peter has that information.
Yeah, we've spoken to the vendor on availability. I don't think if the decision is made to move forward, it should not be a problem doing the install this summer. We have our wiring vendor. He's available and just getting the hardware once the order is placed, but we're not getting the impression there's any issues there as well. So it would be a summer project and ready to go by the fall school year. And as well, it's probably important to note that above each unit will be a camera. So, if there's something on, someone actually pushes that button, there will be a camera recording that going on as well.
Does the camera tie into the police station too? Like, do they?
It does not, no. I mean, they have access to some of it. That's something we could work on, but out of the gate, it won't.
Because I just think about, when you push the button even to get into the school, those cameras are live. So I didn't know if that triggers something.
The ones that are at the door.
The ones at the door are live, but I didn't know if the blue lights, if they had that
This is
capability.
a lot simpler, I think, in terms of camera. It's going to record what goes on
whatever
around the blue light, and that's about it.
Correct.
To be retrieved later if you need
Yes,
it.
if necessary, right.
So the blue light is a VoIP that's ours and there's no ongoing subscription costs. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
Yes,
that's
yes,
correct.
it ties right into our current phone system.
Okay, thank you.
So the Doug Whitefield is town Concord, so we need to coordinate with them. That's not a regional property.
Yeah, we could coordinate that with them.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a
I
problem.
don't think that would be a problem.
No, but we can't just go,
Right.
it's not our property.
Or we could revisit the location to see if we could get it as closely adjacent to it if there was, just so to keep.
If there was an
project on
issue.
track.
Yep.
But either or.
Any other questions or comments or the need for this? Like,
What are
Let's
what
discuss
are the
it.
next steps?
So I mean, for me, securing the campus and ensuring that students, staff, and visitors have access, have the ability to stay safe, I think is the most important aspect of how we kicked off this discussion. And even just for Carrie, we sort of kicked off this whole discussion by talking about whether there might be interest in putting a cell phone tower on campus because of the lack of service. And we had some incidents outside the building where we didn't have students, staff, visitors didn't have access to a landline. And, as we saw that continuing to happen, we felt this is important. We should make sure that at least kids get at a very basic level be safe. So in talking about and recognizing, even if we were to pursue a cell phone tower, which we haven't decided one way or another, if we have interest in that, we learned that a cell phone tower takes a lot of time to, from start to finish. It tends to be almost like 18 to 24 months. So then we started talking about what we might do in the meantime. So to me, what we might do in the meantime is really important. And also too, in our discussions, when I learned that even with a cell phone tower, let's pretend we pursued that and we did it and whatever, there might be need for these pieces of this ecosystem to support and ensure that we're truly secure. So for me, this is a very high need. This is a need, not a want. I think it's our duty to ensure that people on our campus are safe. So I am very much in favor of this, but curious as to what everyone else thinks.
And I would also say, obviously, I am totally in favor of this. This has been an issue ongoing. We've talked about it for a significant amount of time this year. We've heard from community members that are asking us, what are we going to do now? And I think about the amount of activity our campus has after hours. And blue lights are they're a known out there in the community. So you go on any college campus, they're a symbol, and people know what to do when they see that. Other high schools, there aren't any really around here that have them, but I think our campus is quite large and spread out. And I think that this should be a priority just to keep everyone safe, and especially visitors, so they know what to do. And that's.
So can we just, Bob said he wants to walk the administration through the locations. We have to get the quote on the installation. So I'm not sure what the timeline is and all that work. Everybody's very busy time of year. But I would like it to come back with a full dollar amount to the school committee. I'm in favor of it, but I just don't want
to see the installation
costs. Yeah.
They might say, 4 is good enough. Oh, no, we need to, administration.
And I do think that it has the capability, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, that you can add to it. Like if you found that, you had an area that, I think about like those baseball fields that are way out there, I don't know, like, is it good enough to just run there? Or do we need another one out there? I don't know. But I mean, obviously there's cost associated with anything, but I think you can add on to the system. Is that right, Peter?
No, absolutely. And does come down to cost. You can put them anywhere. It's just a matter of how you're going to tie in essentially the electrical and the fiber to the unit. So that's site specific. Yeah, in regards to a walkthrough, I mean, that's not going to take much time, but I think it's important that, so far Derek and the vendor, myself, have only looked through the campus, and be important that other people see the locations, certainly the high school principals, and everyone's comfortable with what we're setting out to do.
In addition to dialing in the town on the town property, I think we ought to dial in the town on the public safety experts as we gather the numbers.
Oh, absolutely.
Are there any procurement factors that are special, sole source of supply type thing or anything like that, where we're going after a particular vendor?
The only thing is it would have to work with our current phone system. So that would be the only proprietary function of
So there would be some proprietary restrictions. Okay, good. Thank you.
Are these on the bid list?
I think they are. He said,
They're state.
Derek, they're on the state bid list.
Yes, they are.
So then it's all set.
Good. So this can get streamlined once this homework gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And ideally, the goal would be this to happen over the summer, so we're ready to rock and roll and when school starts.
Question.
No, I just want to say as a parent and as a first responder, I think this is very important. I know that cost is important, but I think that the safety of these kids and the access to public safety is so much more important. So to be nitpicky on cost and
Not being
on things,
nitpicky, I just
think it's important for, as a parent, as you know, my child's going to the high school next year. It's scary, the lack of communication that my son would have if, you know, an emergency came up.
I'm not being nitpicky. I just would like to,
I'm just saying,
I just wanted us to go together after everybody looks at it and we just see if there's any change in the scope, up or down, you know.
So Peter, if we sort of agreed, if you will, it once you sort of loop in the two co-principals.
Nice if I loop them.
You know, that, and if you could get,
Aaron Jonkis.
yeah, if you guys can get the, I don't want to say buy-in, but approval that these 5 locations work for the campus. Derek, or Peter, I don't know which of you guys, could we get that additional dollar amount for the installation within the month of before our last June 13th meeting? So
Oh, yeah,
that
I mean,
forward?
I'd be able to have an install figure, you know, within a week, so. It's just
And
a
this
matter of
really wouldn't
the
be something we would
locations,
approve.
so.
We would just want to, we would just want to be updated on it.
On the dollar amount.
I would think, right?
Well, the locations will play a big factor to it because again,
Yeah.
we're talking about the baseball diamonds and they got to run a trench from the top of the school to all the way down there. That's going to be kind of costly. But my question that I like to ask is on these entry points within the school, do they have the capability of using, I guess, the intercom system there? Does that have an emergency access to it?
In the building?
Like outside of the building, like if I walk to the main door, is there an emergency button there? Is there
No.
one in the back?
No.
Just to throw that out there, because sometimes that would be the key, because I'm looking at the layout. If I'm in the back of the school and I got to run, 500 feet to get to an emergency button, maybe we should start off with the emergency exits that we already have at the school, just as a point of entry. Because I know from the schools that I worked out of, that was one of the most important pieces.
Yeah.
It was like, we got cameras, but we also have access to the emergency buttons.
Yeah, no, we can find out. There's an emergency button in every main office. And there's a firebox at the entrance of every building. So there's already infrastructure there. So we can certainly find out.
I think you make a good point because in a panic, I might rush toward the main entrance of the building thinking I need to find people. And I would go to the building for people, not find something on a sidewalk unless I saw, of course, the blue light.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But I like your point. They're so symbolic.
yeah, they really are.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So when you press this, it goes to Concord PD.
Yes,
So they are in the loop.
they are,
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not formally.
they're not.
Wanted your okay tonight to get all these folks in the loop. So I will.
That's really important because
no, I'll connect with the chief
they're not on our payroll. Thank goodness.
Yeah. And I'm sure they will be elated on this because I mean, even like doing drills and things like, I mean, they're aware of our communication issue at the high school. So, Carrie.
I had a few logistic questions and that was one of them, that when the button gets pushed, what happens? Are have you talked to the police?
Yeah.
Is anybody going to show up? What's the timing? Do you have any, policies or procedures for when the kids just constantly push the button for no reason?
For what?
Like-
Sorry, I missed that.
When kids just push the button for no reason.
Yeah. That's
Like, I just wondering, just thinking through these things. So.
Because it's a go with the police. They don't get to decide what's happening on the other side.
Right.
Yeah, they have to respond. Yeah.
And I would assume that you have things in the high school handbook, like if you pull a fire alarm, what happens, right? So it'd be the similar thing, because it really is the equivalent of doing that. And I think the rollout at the beginning of the school year it was hugely important because then you have the messaging to the parents, to the students, and anybody else that's there. All right, any other questions or comments on
Just a
Yeah.
related one. Where do we stand vis-a-vis our own internal security personnel at the high school?
We're fully staffed again.
Okay,
It's great.
That's,
you.
I guess that's the short answer. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Really pleased with the quality and caliber of people we've brought in.
Go ahead.
Just a clarification question. Would you be able to communicate with the police? Would you be able to respond to questions? Because usually the police have a handful of questions before they
Yeah.
deploy to anybody. Will these systems have something in place where they can ask the individuals who press the button, what's going on? What's the emergency? Or is it just going to be, all hell breaks loose and all of a sudden the K9 units and
Yeah,
all
right,
that
right.
comes
Yeah.
flying out?
No,
There-
so, yeah, so
Answer
we,
that?
yeah, so when you push the button, it's gonna act like a telephone. So dispatch will answer, they'll be able to have a two-way conversation with you.
Great.
So it's gonna be the same if you pick up the phone, dial 911, they're gonna answer it in the same manner. And then, you can tell them your nature of your emergency.
Are we switching topics to wireless indoor, outdoor, or is this all part of the same sort of ecosystem conversation?
Well, we'll continue to talk about this. So we also talked about the cell phone tower. So
Okay.
if we're good with blue lights, we're gonna move on a little bit to cell phone tower.
Okay, well, and then I do have questions about the indoor and outdoor wireless.
So
I'm just
that,
wondering if we've talked about that or not.
we have not talked about that. I think it's more of an internal, I think they're managing their wireless
Okay, so
situation. So
something
we're not
that we-
updated on that yet. No, they're not ready on that.
Oh, okay, I understand.
I jumped-
Tonight was just the
I jumped forward a little bit, sorry.
blue light. Okay, great.
Yes.
One last question for me. Operation hours. Is it going to be functioning during school hours or is it going to be a 24-hour type of thing?
24/7.
24/7. Okay, so in terms of cell phone tower, because I know that some people are listening specifically on the cell phone tower. So I think we need to decide if we have all of this happening, what is our need? Where do we kind of stand? Where do we stand with the town? And there are a few things that I think Alexa and I have talked about that we would like to explore more with the town on other options that the town might be pursuing. If we choose to move forward with that. So does anyone have any strong feelings about the cell phone tower on our campus at this point and how we move forward in either pursuing it or waiting? Because we do owe our Verizon rep some information on that, who came to us our last meeting. Carrie.
So I guess I just feel like if we have and I've said this before, but we have a townwide problem and we need to have a townwide solution. So if putting a cell phone tower at the high school helps solve the townwide problem, then I'm 100% supportive of it. But if it is I just don't think that we should be doing it in isolation.
Exactly.
So that's where I am. I would love to hear what the town's approach to this is and how if this property is something that could be beneficial, I mean, I think everything should be on the table at this point, but that's where I am.
Okay.
And I'd only heard a little bit about this project, but I could be wrong, but I heard that it was only, a Verizon tower was only going to help Verizon customers. Is that the case? Because if it is, what's like,
No.
not a Verizon customer.
No, neither. So what happens is Verizon installs, and now whoever would install the tower would have to win the bid. So say Verizon wins the bid and they build the tower, all the other carriers can hang off of their tower.
Okay.
So it would not just be Verizon, but it would be up to the other carriers to decide if they want to hang underneath it or not.
Oh, okay.
So how do we move forward, sort of reigniting this community-wide conversation?
I have some thoughts on that. Do you have some thoughts on that?
I'd like to hear everyone else's thoughts on that.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any thoughts on that about how we should?
Well, I just want to remind you all, we did meet with the town's IT director and had a conversation with them. So we aren't working in total isolation.
No.
Just want to remind us all of that already.
I mean, obviously we're from Carlisle, but and I'm just asking, is your town on board? Because the only thing I know about cell towers in Concord is there's two by Middlesex that is in contention when we were doing our cell towers for our fire department, because we don't get good range either.
Yeah.
So and I know there was some contention with those. So is your town even on board?
Very much. So I think my interpretation of what I've seen with respect to the town is they are trying to support partners, if you will, who are willing to put towers on their properties. At present, I don't know if the town has identified sites on their own, but they are guiding, assisting, and partnering with private, for lack of a better word, pieces, parcels of land, whatnot. Again, terminology, I don't know. And so that's sort of my personal take in the conversations that we've had. So absolutely, yes, I think they would be highly collaborative and supportive of this.
Can I make a comment? Sorry, I've had my Zoom
I'm
hand
sorry.
raised.
You know what? We are meeting. This is a meeting, so our public comment is only at the beginning of our meeting. But if you have a question, you can certainly email us. But we only take comments from the public at the beginning of our meeting. I apologize. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So that's my take. That would, in my estimation, from, again, the conversations that Lori, Tracy, and I have had, that would not be an obstacle. I think what we need to gather some sort of consensus on is, before we take any kind of next steps, is this something that we would be interested in pursuing? And again, then going back to Tracy, I think my feeling is, I guess I'll just out with it. I was going to listen, but I'm sort of talking. I think the next step would be for us. We've met with the IT leadership. I think one of the things that we had bantered about was meeting with the chair of the select board to talk about sort of, again, how to make this part of a comprehensive plan. We do know, because there are infographics, maps, we do know that our parcel here, or at the high school, is part of a larger comprehensive strategy where it would benefit not just our campus, but the town. So
It's part of the overlay. The overlay is the technical term of like where they need it to be to get coverage. Look at me. I know.
So we do know that. We do know that putting a cell phone tower on our campus would have benefit, not just to our campus, but in addition, that would serve the community. There are other sites that that are part of that overlay as well. So I do think there could be discussion with the select board, with town leadership, as to, should we pursue sites concurrently, look for the best option? I don't know, but I do think we should do it a little bit more collaboratively. I don't know.
So what is Verizon expecting from us?
Nothing. An answer at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we need to, this discussion with Verizon has been happening since 2017, I would have to say. So, they're hanging on, they're waiting. And obviously we have a property they're interested in. I don't know if other cell carriers are interested in that. There are some things happening in the town.
Verizon to build the tower.
They want Verizon to build it because Verizon, I mean, it will cost us nothing.
So getting back to campus safety, if we pursue the blue light locations and people feel like there's, significant coverage, does the administration then have many fewer concerns about?
I don't personally. I still think we have a pretty significant problem there. I think these other things are better than what we have right now, but it's not enough. I was down on Memorial Field last week and I could send a text, maybe. I couldn't tweet. I couldn't send pictures on the text. You're pretty paralyzed down there. So no, we can get emergency is really great. That's going to be a big next step, but I don't feel that it's enough.
And what's the income? You said it's nothing, but it's got to be something.
Well, it's about 60,000
a year.
But I look at that as a first offer. If they really want it, I think we negotiate a better.
This
term
is
with
about
them.
some income.
It is about some revenue, yeah.
I'll echo what I think you were saying, Alexa, and that is this is worthy of consideration after we look at it as a comprehensive town set of solutions. We had a Verizon rep here recently, and I thought the analysis was a little bit deficient because it only came up with solutions on our property. And if he didn't quite answer my question, were you requested to only come up with solutions on our property? I didn't get a yes or a no on that, but only when I see a comprehensive town-wide solution am I ready to consider anything. I'll go further and say, declare it right now, all things being equal, I would not put a tower on school property. But again, with the proviso, all things being equal. So we need to see what that means. Where are these alternative proposals and solutions?
Yeah, I'd like us to hear about the wireless options.
Yeah, and we did only ask, I mean, his scope was just our campus. We can't ask him anything else. Because that's outside of, what we can do. And just, I guess, to echo kind of what you're saying is, I think about last week, we had this Spirit Assembly. Harry told us about the Spirit Assembly. You're down on the field. You still have probably students and teachers in the building. So you might not have a 911 emergency, but you might need the nurse. So how are you going to communicate with the nurse when you're down on the field? So there is still, it's not just about, the kids can't text each other or whatever. It really still is about safety.
Yeah, but I think Court is going back to, and I echo this, I think you and I are quite aligned. I don't have any insight yet as to whether the town leadership in terms of like the employees themselves and or the select board themselves, I don't see yet any evidence that there are other sites being looked at. I see what I've seen thus far is individual groups and organizations, us being one, I know a church in town being another. I don't know how public that is. What I have not yet seen is whether, to your point, there is a comprehensive strategy that would necessitate, I think, some town involvement.
The private property you refer to is in fact town solution number one, and they have a second location should that not come through. So it strikes me that if we're trying to deal with a communication problem for the town of Concord, we look at where there is a definite sighting, because they have two, pretty clear, pretty definitive, and they're going to choose one or their backup. And then I think you can get the analysis. If that one is parked here, where is the second one best located? You got to park one somewhere before you know its implications for number two.
The dominoes kind of fall.
So, and I think the town is working pretty assertively toward this.
Yeah, so maybe we can do a check-in with Henry. The select board also has their list of liaison assignments, and I believe that Henry is our liaison anyway. So we do owe him a meeting. Great.
Tracy, you brought up a question I now have as a school nurse. Do you not have access to your school nurses when you're out on the field?
Well, there's
yeah.
walkies. No, there are walkies and things like
We have
that.
radios.
Like from a cell phone. No.
I was like, what?
If you go to your cell phone first, though, you just don't know what people are
Parents.
going to do. Right? Like
Okay.
you don't know. I'm sure they bring walkies
Yeah,
down
the
there and
walkie-talkies.
yeah, security is down there. They have access. It was just a hypothetical, so to speak.
Have we looked at alternatives to cell phone towers like the smart cells or micro cells? We could put them more places. They're less obtrusive. Is that an alternative? Have we looked at that?
Have you looked at that before this discussion or no? Probably not.
No, Peter,
Is he still on?
I'm just thinking we could put them where we need them and as many as we need.
I
That
think the issue is we don't have enough signal to use.
To amplify them.
Amplify otherwise.
Right.
We've got
It
Peter- There's
does-
a repeater at the high school.
Yeah, it does come back to that core issue. When we built the high school, during the construction project, we did put a repeater in the building and it was part of the construction. But the struggle is to amplify what signal you're picking up. And it's kind of a vicious cycle there where you can't really get what you need to amplify in that building. It's a very strong system existing in the building, but there's not much signal for us to get.
I would like to hear about the options regarding the wireless access points, which we could. Peter, it would, the infrastructure in the Memorial Field, we could put one down there, right?
Sure. These are all things we
There's
could-
already one down there.
We could expand it. It's in the press box, yes?
Yep,
An outdoor access point or an indoor access point?
outdoor.
Oh my, I'm confused. Okay.
It looks like we need to come back to this.
We've been looking at
Yeah.
both and we had said that we weren't ready to talk
Talk
about.
about that, yes. We're like starting with the blue lights and then we'll get more information on that.
Can we create a timeline? Because I know from the last conversation we had, we were looking at 18 to 24 months to put this tower up, and time is just, if we're still waiting to hear from the city, well, the town, if we're still waiting to hear from, other parties, we're losing time. We're not gaining any more. So if there's a way that we can put a calendar together so we can have some of these things ironed out, so we can have a better discussion.
Yeah.
'Cause at the end of the day, this time next year, we'll still be in the same place.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point.
So I think the blue lights are the easiest thing. So maybe the priority is like by our next meeting is if the principals can do the walkthrough with
Yep,
Aaron
no, we'll
Jarvis
come
and all
back.
of
The
that.
blue lights, I don't think are a big lift.
Yeah.
So that I think we're good.
That we can get done.
And
relatively
then in the
quickly.
meantime, we'll connect with the select board, help with that, make a little timeline
Timeline.
for getting some comprehensive data with them so that we can make a better and informed decision about this tower here.
We'll do as much as we can on the Wi-Fi by then.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
So it's coming back to our next agenda. Thank you all. But I do think
Sorry.
we're making movement.
I actually had one more question about campus safety, just since we're on that. For next year, this year, the introduction of the fingerprint, is that continuing next year? Just because I'm not sure who is aware, but I come here every day to pick up my son for lunch and my other son who I always ask, it's not working.
Not working.
Cafeteria.
Yeah, I know we've been.
Kids, I know I've done it because I've
Yeah.
come to use the bathroom and you just have to wait there and bang on the door for somebody to let you in. So I'm just wondering
Yeah,
if people were aware.
we are aware, and the folks that are zooming in are the ones responsible. So we'll ask them to keep taking a look at it. I think it gets fixed and then goes down again a lot. So we have to figure out why.
I did actually talk to my daughter about it and she said, oh, it actually works now. I was using the wrong finger. So depending on what finger you fingerprinted.
Well, yeah, you have to use the
Yeah,
same
she
one.
used the same one. She was using the wrong finger and she's like, oh, it works. And I'm like, okay, great. So, and I do think sometimes the kids, and I'm not suggesting, but some of the other kids just, it's easier to knock than it is to put your finger down. They don't always do that, but
Does that mean there's not a problem?
no, I think that they're quirky. That's what I would.
I know when I was there last week, there's a sign there that says it works right now. So it
Okay.
clearly has been a little bit
There's
up
a
and down.
off and on.
So
I hope it's under warranty.
It is new.
we'll figure out why.
Squad.
All right, great. All right, so moving on to our action items, we have a furniture donation to approve today, and it was for desks and chairs.
Mhm.
Tracy, can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we move to action items. I had one, it should have been in the report, so I apologize. I had some good news I wanted to share from CCACE, that they received $15,000 from the Community Trust for scholarships. And they also received another $15,000 for parent education. So I wanted to pass that along and share that.
Great.
Community
Yeah.
chest, right?
Community Trust.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to get that
Right,
in.
no, that's
Throw the
great.
good news in.
No,
That's a lot.
donations, money is always great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Technically, we approve, technically, at some point, we approve that.
Okay, so our furniture donation, if anyone has the motion language in front of us, there are for standing desks and chairs.
I have it.
All right,
I move that the Concord and Concord Carlisle School Committees vote to approve a furniture donation of 4 desks and 6 chairs from Wally Johnson at Energy for the Common Good.
and do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Are these new or used?
Slightly used, they're in great shape.
Do we want them?
Yes, I have already vetted that.
Do we know where they're going?
We are soliciting from the schools right now, so I have a few people that are interested in seeing them.
Because I would note that we're going to be getting rid of vast amounts of furniture in our middle schools very soon, if it's anything like the high school.
Certainly we are, yes.
So
These are in much
I
better.
hope we're not setting a precedent for being the recipient of used furniture. We just had our swap off in town a couple days ago, so I'm not opposed to this, but I certainly wouldn't want it to be a precedent.
No, we turn down more than we accept. So this was vetted and worth our while.
And I think the standing desks tend to be a hot commodity.
They are standing.
Yeah, middle school and the high school. And I do know just from experience that Concord Ed Fund gets grants every single year for standing desks, and they do not do just furniture.
They are not doing furniture
Yeah,
anymore.
they're not doing furniture. So it's, it seems like it's furniture, but for kids that really need to stand and move and all of that.
Adults.
And adults too. They're both. Any other discussion?
No, I'm grateful for it. I think it's when we can get high quality things that don't cost the district money, I think that's important for us to vet those in light of where we all stand financially. So I appreciate the donation and think it's wise for us to accept it.
And I think this you'll want to approve as two separate.
Okay.
We find the locations for them.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't all go to the high school.
So in the approval, so this is just new. So if you are a member of Concord and the region, you can say aye for both. And if you're a member of the region, you can just say for region, and that will do it. Okay. All right. So all in favor? Well, this is tricky because we're not on Zoom. Say aye for both, or we can just say.
Should we could roll call it?
You do it separately.
Two separate votes.
Those are the good old days.
Oh, my gosh. I don't think I was here in the good old days. That's, do you want to do the one for?
Sure. CPS.
You need a motion.
You need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion.
Concord, So,
Okay.
A motion for CCHS.
all right, so let's
Right?
vote
Yeah,
on,
let's
let's vote on the region. All in favor? Aye.
I
Okay.
Can I have a motion to approve the donation at the Concord Public Schools?
Move that the Concord School Committee vote to approve a furniture donation of 4 desks and 6 chairs from Wally Johnson at Energy for the Common Good.
Do I have a
or
second?
some portion thereof.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
I
Thanks.
All right, thank you. And with that, I will adjourn the Concord Carlisle School Committee. Thank you to our Carlisle members.
Right.
Have a great evening. Maybe watch the
Night.
Celtics. I don't know.
Ugh,
Yes, they are.
that's so depressing.
Cynthia, they're playing tonight. They're playing tonight, right? Okay, okay. Uh-oh.
Given that this agenda is so short, can we press through or does anyone need a break?
we're going to press.
press.
Okay, let's press
through it.
through.
Let's do
Wonderful.
it.
I love you people.
Do it.
All right, so we're gonna go right into Bob's update on our CPS capital projects and where we stand on those. You did receive a memo. But if you could do a quick recap for us all so that we're all on the same page, that would be outstanding.
Sure. So at I think the last meeting or the meeting before, I was asked to provide a summary on prior year capital projects and where they stood and where they were going. So I've done that. I wanted to focus a little bit more, I don't think that I necessarily, if you've seen this, need to read through everything, but maybe highlight some that are significant. The first one is 2020. So this was approved in 2021 town meeting for use in FY22. The ERU replacement at Thoreau, the project's gone out to bid. We anticipate awarding the winning bidder in June 2023. We have a significant lead time, supply chain issues. So we expect that the time that this work will be completed will be late spring or summer of 2024. Obviously hoping for spring. We've heard 50 weeks lead time quoted. So again, we'll push as hard as we can to get that in before the warm weather next year and hope that we have success. There are some smaller ones I'm gonna skip over unless people had questions. And I did want to highlight a few things that were completed this year. We do have carpet and tile replacements going, capital dollars allocated for those in each of our schools. Work was done at Alcott 2 years ago in Willard. There are some remaining funds that we'll use for Thoreau, which has the most need now. The integrated playground upgrades at Thoreau were completed. We wanted to thank the PTG for their funding. They contributed, they cost shared that with us, contributed a large sum of money to help us complete that project. So that was completed in the fall of this year. We have new flooring here at Ripley. I believe there's one room, it's substantially completed. I think there's one room additionally that needs to be done, but it's basically complete at a savings. The paving and sidewalks, I don't know if people are familiar with the walkway. We've had community kind of feedback on the status of the walkway. People like to bike. So we went out and received quotes for that. The quotes came in above 50,000, which requires, we were supposed to go out to bid if it's above 50,000. So we had to kind of cancel the quote process, go back out to bid. So we're in the process of getting that bid document together to go out. That doesn't necessarily have to be done during the summer. It's in a space that's behind the building. And it's not going to affect traffic. So we'll hope to award the bid in June and have the work done during the summer. But if it carries into the fall, it's not an issue. In addition, part of that 200,000 will go towards the pavement. We could do some crack sealing. We are part of the town of Concord's procurement on crack sealing and repairs to pavement. And we'll work with the vendor that's selected for that to do anything we need to do out in the, and this is more minor repairs. This is not like a repaving. We completed the alternative energy project. The Ripley electrical connections was deferred. And I did note there's $50,000 placeholder for each of the 2 middle school buildings, which are very old and obviously being replaced for a reason. So I did kind of highlight some of the projects that were done there over the past few years. That's not all inclusive, but includes some of the significant projects that we had to address during the past 2 years. To the extent we have things that are not health and safety related in the Sanborn and Peabody, which we'll try to obviously avoid capital investment that isn't necessary. But if it is related to life safety and health, we need to do it. And those are the things that we've spent on. One of them was improving the door access, to make sure we had secure building access. So we worked on that. We had some mold remediation in another building. So those are kind of the things that money is intended for. So that's the last a view of the last couple of years. And we'll leave it there unless there's any questions.
Questions, anybody?
Have we issued the bonds for any of this?
So this was interesting to me. So I learned that we typically borrow in the spring. The town typically borrows in the spring, 9 months into the year. And there are laws, they've assured me that permit us to spend in the meantime. So that's something that I've learned recently. They have just gone out to borrow for 2021 and 2022. I think that was my understanding from what was conveyed to me. That was an oversight. So they're borrowing for both of these 2 years together at 1.8 million. And then in the spring of 2024, they'll borrow the funds for FY24 capital of 495,000.
Who floats the money to pay the vendors in the meantime?
The town has internal borrowing provisions to do that. But
on behalf of the region or just CPS?
This is just CPS. Yeah, no, the region. Yeah.
So they're covering it somehow.
They are. And we've also had projects. So for example, there's $665,000 here for the ERUs. We haven't done that. And those funds aren't going to be spent that work's going to happen 12 months from now, most likely.
Now, we have a analysis underway for all of CPS buildings. How does that figure in with the ERU replacement that we put forward 2 years ago? Does that give us pause to say, let's get that analysis in place and see if it confirms our plans at Thorough?
The ERUs we need for the building to run its HVAC systems. It's not functioning too well. Building's a little bit, I think, more than a little bit uncomfortable at this time of year. It also helps with energy efficiency. If we did an assessment now, it would show up as a need. But the assessments FY24 capital, we're not going to do that until next year. But this has been identified as a clear need, and if we didn't do it, it would just show up as something we should do right away.
Notwithstanding the fact that it might take more than a year to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the concern too. We already hear about
Look at
lead
the
times.
timing of this analysis and that work. I'm just curious if that can benefit us in any way.
So I guess my question is it the ERU agnostic to gas or electric infrastructure, or does it matter?
Yeah, maybe that's a better question. I don't know.
My understanding is the ERU works with the existing infrastructure that we have there.
Right.
If we looked at the example we talked about in the Alcott feasibility study, that was designed to work with the existing systems that were there.
Mhm.
We're not necessarily looking at integrating a different system with this, but from what I understand, that's a possibility.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that, Bob. We can move on to our action item. I'd entertain a motion to approve the CMS field trip. Lori, do you want to give us some data on that?
Yeah, just
before
a
we-
really quick high level. Mr. Cameron's hoping to take 6 students who are playbook leaders to visit with the grandfather of a student currently who's a Holocaust survivor. They had hoped he could come here. He's not well enough to do that. So they're going to Connecticut. If this was a little closer, you wouldn't even need to approve it, but it's over the line. And they're looking to do it next week because they like to video it and then have the 8th grade group watch before they go to DC and the Holocaust.
Awesome.
It's really cool. Can we see the video?
Yeah, I know. I think we all can see the video.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I looked at the proposal. Can you clarify the dates? Well, it mentioned a date for the start of the trip, but a time for the end of the trip. So is the presumption it's all same day?
Yeah.
You get down there and back?
All down, down there and back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
What part of Connecticut?
West Hartford.
Okay, not too
Not bad, an hour and a half.
84.
2
so-
hours, 2.5
Yeah.
hours.
Not even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve the CMS field trip to Connecticut on May 31st.
Second.
Any discussion? I think this is great.
Sounds like a very important trip.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Here's the video.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. With that, let's adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And